Apocalypse. I can obtain infinite upgrades by drawing cards. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Fairy Card Set. Consume 20 contribution points and you can draw 2 cards in a row. The first card quickly appeared. A virtual card that only Lin Qun could see gradually appeared in front of him. The information on it was also quickly presented. Name, Fire Talisman, *3, Type, Consumable Item Card Grade, F Level. Description: use this item card to obtain 3 simple fire talismans. Use them immediately after staining them with blood and immediately release a fire attack spell. Do you want to materialize? Consumable item card. Talismans are the most common and basic things in the immortal system. 1 card can be exchanged for 3 talismans, but I don't know how powerful they are. Lin Qun glanced at the people who were talking happily and quietly chose to materialize in the corner. The card instantly appeared in Lin Qun's palm. As Lin Qun used it, the card turned into a faint white light and disappeared, and the 3 fire talismans appeared in Lin Qun's palm. The fire talisman looked ordinary. The yellow talisman paper and the runes seemed to be written in cinnabar. They looked exactly the same as those sold online. And it was light. The paper seemed fragile and thin. Can it really be used? But the system can't draw a fake, and there are only 3 of these things. Wouldn't it be a waste to use one for testing when not in combat? 10 contribution points for 3 fire talismans means 3 fire attack spells. This fire talisman is worth 3 contribution points, which is about the same as a PG. I think it shouldn't be too bad, right? Next time against the Bacatons, try the fire talisman. Lin Qun imagined the scene. He patted his Kayankan bag and drew out a fire talisman and threw it out. Wow, he became a monk in a second. Lin Qun was eager to try. He quietly put away the fire talisman and looked at the result of the next draw. After 2 consecutive draws, the second card was slowly emerging. Before seeing the effect, just by looking at the picture on the card, Lin Qun's already weird expression suddenly became even weirder. He felt like he had drawn something extraordinary, because on the card, there was a beautiful body of a girl. It was a body, and only a body, just like a screenshot from a beautiful picture, only a part of the girl's body, and the rest of the picture seemed to be outside the picture of the card. Moreover, the upper body was extremely proud, with fair skin, tall mountains, and a slim waist. In the hazy robe, she sat upright, and there was a feeling of being cold and independent in the world. People dared not offend. Lin Qun immediately looked up at the people around him with a guilty conscience, as if he was watching a small movie in school, as if others could see his card drawing skill interface. But he soon realized that this was purely a psychological effect. What kind of card is this? Lin Qun's eyes moved quickly, and the content of this card also surprised Lin Qun a little. The description on the card is: name, Fairy's Concentration, type, skill card, description, use this skill card to stay focused and continuously restore your energy. Special note, this card is from the fairy deck. Collect the Fairy's Concentration, Fairy's Embroidered Shoes, Fairy's Hairpin, and Fairy's Incense to synthesize the Fairy Gaze card, and you will successfully gain the attention of the fairy. It's a skill, and it's a deck of cards. Lin Qun looked at this description and his mind moved. It's a skill to restore energy. No wonder this card only has half a picture. The protagonist is not the fairy, but the concentration that she is practicing while sitting. Lin Qun quickly used the skill card. Silently, he successfully loaded this skill. After observing it for a while, he was delighted. This skill is actually more like a passive skill. Once mastered, it can be activated all the time, when you are moving or resting. Not only does it not consume energy, but it can also speed up the recovery of energy. Under normal circumstances, if Lin Qun is in action or combat, it is good enough if his energy is not consumed, not to mention recovery. But if he can keep running this skill, he can continue to recover in any state. When resting, the energy recovery speed is more than doubled, and a little energy can be recovered in nearly 10 minutes. Even when in action, with the blessing of the concentration technique, it can achieve at least 20 minutes to recover a little energy. This sounds nothing, but it means that Lin Qun's dependence on blue bottles will be greatly reduced, and the number of contribution points he has left after a hunt will rise sharply. This is exactly the continuous recovery ability that Lin Qun is in urgent need of now. With this skill, combined with the concentration pill, he has both the means of slow recovery and fast replenishment. Even if he encounters a protracted war, the longer the battle drags on, the slower the rhythm, the more energetic he can be. Recover while fighting, especially in some situations where no one can take down anyone. The opponent is exhausted in the continuous confrontation, but he can be full of energy, getting more and more fierce, and extremely durable. Isn't this too long? Thinking of this, Lin Qun thought of something for no reason, and glanced at Zhao Wen in the corner. This concentration technique seems to be applicable to other battlefields. In addition, Lin Qun is somewhat concerned about the card set itself. There are also embroidered shoes, hairpins, incense, a bunch of item cards, but the final synthesis is a gaze of the fairy. Good guy. This collection of fairy items can also get the attention of the fairy. I stole her magic and took away her shoes and hairpins. How can she not pay attention? When Lin Qun thought of this, he suddenly had an idea. His innate ability is to draw cards infinitely, but the items obtained by drawing cards are all from the real existence or fantasy products of the earth he traveled through. In other words, this fairy should be someone he knows, and who can be called a fairy without great means. And now he is in two different worlds from the earth. Can the fairy over there still pay attention to him? If so, I don't know. Is the attention of this fairy a good thing or a bad thing? That is a fairy. The fairy in Chinese mythology and fantasy stories. At the very least, it is not something that ordinary people can resist. If he can get her help, what is bastion? Of course, it is also possible that the fairy thought that I had stolen her things and slapped me to death. However, with my talent for drawing cards, I should not be able to draw any suicide cards. What kind of personality this fairy has depends on who she is. Unfortunately, this card is just a piece of underwear and a thin branch with fruits on it. At most, you can see a part of the neck above the collarbone, and you can't see her face clearly, so there is no way to judge who she is. While others were still communicating, Lin Qun closed his eyes and began to secretly perform the concentration technique. This concentration technique is considered a card from the Eastern world. Although it also adds bonuses when used, it is different from the immediate headshot female skill. Lin Qun needs to digest and master it himself. Only by internalizing it in your heart can you use it freely and activate this skill in any state. When it was running, Lin Qun really felt different. His energy recovery speed in the natural state almost doubled, and he himself felt refreshed. Lin Qun practiced secretly, but he was also looking forward to it. This can be said to be the first gangfa he drew. In the future, he may even get more. Anything like the Heavenly Dragon Heart technique or the Immortal Sutra is possible. He might even be able to draw out some trickery magic. Of course, Lin Qun also understood that he couldn't rush things and had to take one step at a time. What he had to do now was to digest the concentration technique and go out to hunt the Bastions as soon as possible. Chapter 52, The Demonic Man. Late at night. Survivor base of the 6th prison in the Magic City. Lin Qun was wandering around in the survivor base. At this time, many survivors in the building had already fallen asleep, but Lin Qun's eyes were shining, and he was in high spirits. He was wandering around like this, of course, not for nothing. He was adapting to using the concentration technique in any state. This spell was not difficult. After practicing secretly for an hour or two, Lin Qun was almost able to spontaneously maintain the activation of the concentration technique skill in a quiet state. But this was not the key for Lin Qun. The greatest significance of this skill was that it could be slowly restored in battle, and the important thing was to be able to use it freely in the state of action. Therefore, while his energy value had not yet recovered completely, Lin Qun simply took the initiative to walk out and wandered around the survivor base in the middle of the night, deliberately finding things to do for himself and practicing to maintain the operation of the concentration technique in various situations. And as Lin Qun had judged before, as long as he could use this skill as passive, He could achieve a slow recovery of energy, even when he was doing things. All along, when Lin Qun was hunting bastions outside, he basically relied on blue bottles, because in the tense combat state, where was there time to rest? Even if there was time, it was impossible to have so much time to slowly recover. When he could recover, the battle was basically over. This made Lin Qun's endurance not high. Although he killed many bastions, many contribution points were given to the contribution point mall. But with this skill, Lin Qun is equivalent to having his own endurance. For every 3 points of natural recovery, 1 contribution point can be saved. Maybe he still needs to exchange, but the consumption of contribution points will inevitably be greatly reduced. On the whole, the total number of contribution points available to Lin Qun will be directly increased. Lin Qun practiced hard for a long time, and turned into a demon. He wandered around the survivors' base. Some survivors thought he was sneaking around in the middle of the night, and were very wary of him. There were also girls who pulled him, and said in a coquettish voice, "Brother, what time is it now? You are still out so late, play with your sister." After practicing hard, he succeeded for a long time. He could activate this skill while being semi-unconscious, but he also knew that, if he really got to the dangerous battlefield, he might have to interrupt it again. If he wanted to completely turn it into a passive mana recovery, he still needed to gradually practice it. As he practiced, his energy also recovered to 24 points, and the whole person instantly became energetic. With such energy, he would not have any problem not sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. Full of energy, Lin Qun immediately became lively again. His eyes were shining, and he was eager to try, ready to go out and kill monsters again. Hunting bastions, earning contribution points, and improving strength. This is the kingly way. As long as his energy allows, Lin Qun will definitely take positive action. At that moment, he put the things into the Kyankan bag, and took a deep breath. This thing is also very useful. It can greatly shorten the rest time he needs, and allow him to get more contribution points in a shorter time. At this time, it was already 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was dark and quiet outside the prison, but in the depths and far ends of the magic city, there were still dense gunfire sounds. The battlefield of the magic city has become a complete civilization meat grinder. No one will stop until one side is completely defeated or killed. Lin Qun passed the crowd lying and sleeping everywhere in the prison, and returned to his room. He directly expressed his thoughts and said, "I want to continue to go out and hunt the bastions. Who wants to join us? But we can't all go, at most 3 people, and we must leave 2 to guard the house." Now the survivors' base is crowded with people and eyes. After all, they still have supplies here. If they all leave and someone sneaks in to steal their things, it will be a loss. Although Lin Qun has a Kyankan bag, the space is limited after all. They found a lot of things in the supermarket, which far exceeded the capacity of his Kyankan bag. After some discussion, everyone decided that Li Ji and Kan Yingying would go out with Lin Qun, while Li Xing and Zhao Wen would stay behind. Li Xing flattered him, "Boss, you are really an Iron Man. How long have you been back? You hardly had any rest, and you are going out to hunt the bastions again. I guess those soldiers in the military don't have your physique." Lin Qun's physique is 20 points, and his energy is 24. With the combination of the two, he naturally has unlimited energy. The 3 of them set off directly. There was a little episode on the way. They met Fan Wenchun and others in prison. They also arrived at the survivor base of the 6th prison in the Magic City. But compared with the previous separation, Fan Wenchun was obviously more haggard, and there were fewer people around him. His wife was gone. When he saw Lin Qun, he was also stunned for a moment. His eyes flashed, and he said, "Lin Qun, is Li Xing still with you? Are you willing to join us?" Lin Qun was slightly stunned for a moment, and it took him a moment to react. Fan Wenchun threw him an olive branch, not for him, but for Li Xing. He smiled and shook his head. "It's very safe here. I think no one needs to follow anyone specifically." The skinny man behind Fan Wenchun frowned and said, "Our brother Fan kindly invited you. Why are you like this? Do you think we still want to find Li Xing as a backer? We just came out of the 21st. He is." He didn't finish his words, but was interrupted by Fan Wenchun's glare. Fan Wenchun said, "Don't get me wrong. I didn't mean that. I just thought that after all, we came out together, and we can take care of each other. I can understand that Li Xing is very powerful and doesn't want to come, but if you want, we are very welcome. We can make a living here together. Fan Wenquan said it sincerely. I don't know what he has experienced along the way. He seems to have changed a lot. The cunning and sharpness he had at the survivors' base are gone. He seems to really think that Lin Qun and the others may not have an easy time either and want to keep each other warm. Lin Qun looked at him and shook his head. Thank you, but it's not necessary. Fan Wenquan nodded and said nothing more. If you need anything, you can come to us at any time. I will help you if I can. With that, he left with the skinny man. His back seemed to be much older than before. In the last sentence, he seemed to be sincere. If Lin Qun and the others really looked for him, he seemed to really help him if he could. Lin Qun looked at his back and felt a little complicated. In this era and this situation, no one has an easy life. After experiencing more, looking back, those arrogant and unreasonable conflicts with others are actually stupid. Li Ji said softly. It seems that his wife is gone. Lin Qun just shook his head and said, we can't control other people's affairs. Let's go and hunt the Baccatans. Find 21 as a backer. He will return to the top 3 of the rankings today. Chapter 53 Li Ji's new equipment. Leaving the survivor base was smooth. It was already late at night, and the survivor base was still brightly lit. Outside, there was a long queue that stretched as far as the eye could see. The soldier who issued the pass had not changed shifts yet, and was very surprised that Lin Qun came out again just a few hours after returning. Lin Qun got the news from him that at least 3 survivor bases would be established in Dongcheng district, which would accommodate nearly 1 million survivors. The population of the magic city was too large. Even after 3 days of disaster, there were still a large number of survivors, far exceeding the capacity limit of the survivor base of the 6th prison. And Lin Qun also confirmed his previous speculation here. The 6th prison, where they were located, was the 3rd survivor base of the magic city. The 1st and 2nd survivor bases began to absorb survivors earlier, located in the South City district and the North City district. This means that the military is gradually gaining a foothold from the chaos in the early stage. Coming out of the base, looking at the long convoy outside, Li Ji said with some worry, I don't know what happened to my hometown. He was worried about his parents. We can go back, don't think too much. Lin Qun patted his shoulder and comforted him. Li Ji nodded vigorously. Of course, brother Lin, we will all survive and leave the magic city alive. The safe zone radiated by the survivor base is about 1 kilometer. Lin Qun and his 3 friends set out on foot, bypassing the survivor base. This time, they did not go further to the suburbs of the magic city, but moved closer to the city center, where they came from. Lin Qun had just sunk an attack ship there. For the sake of caution, he did not plan to go there for the time being. That area was almost completely deserted. The streets and buildings were full of traces of war damage. There were charred bodies on the ground, some of them were Baccatans and some were human. However, the weapons on the human warriors had long disappeared, and there was nothing valuable left. Some supermarkets and shops along the way were also like this. A large number of survivors gathered and passed by, so this area was naturally plundered. There were many people in the survivor base, and supplies were in short supply. What was worthless now was the vehicles. Cheap and expensive, all lying on the side of the road. Even if the doors were open and the keys were inside, no one cared. Less than 200 meters away from the radiation area of the survivor base, they encountered the first group of Baccatans. There were 3 Baccatans, also looking for humans to hunt. The 2 sides met on a narrow road, and they were very excited, thinking that they had encountered prey. The battle broke out quickly and ended quickly. Lin Qun killed 2, Li Ji solved 1, and Kan Yingying was mainly responsible for fire suppression. She knew her own strength very well. In this situation, there was no room for her to make a move, and she did not rush for contribution points, just playing auxiliary. This was just the beginning. The gathering of a large number of survivors made many Baccatan armed personnel see the opportunity, and they all moved closer to this side, hunting and killing humans in groups of 3 or 5. And this was exactly what Lin Qun and the other 2 wanted. They attacked from all sides, using the cover of night. to avoid large-scale bastion regular troops, and specifically hunted those scattered bastion armed personnel. Like a ghost, they moved forward in the dark. During this process, Lin Qun had been continuously operating the concentration technique, preparing to maintain it consciously first, and then completely turn it into instinct, turning the skill into a passive one. And in the battle, Lin Qun would consciously take the time to recover during the rest. In the past, the natural recovery speed of energy was too slow, so there was no need for that, but now it is possible. Take advantage of every gap in the battle to quickly recover energy. The effect of the concentration technique is vividly displayed in the subtleties, and its effect is also very obvious. During the battle, Lin Qun's energy has been continuously recovered. At the same time, he deliberately took Li Ji to exercise, giving him the opportunity to fight with the bastion people and grow in actual combat. Li Ji almost used up his ability to kill a bastion before. He attacked frantically in panic and had no accuracy at all, so his contribution points have been growing slowly. Now, with Lin Qun's escort, Li Ji dared to go up, fighting with the bastion people at close range, gradually becoming more accurate, and his shots became more calm. In a dark alley, a bastion man was half charred, with a terrible big hole in his neck, and fell on his back. In front of it, Li Ji showed an excited expression. "Brother, here I come. 10 contribution points, that's enough for me." Following Lin Qun all the way forward hunting, Li Ji exhausted 4 discharge opportunities and successfully gained 3 contribution points. Together with his original ones, it was enough to exchange for the discharge weapon he had been thinking about. Such efficiency was something Li Ji dared not imagine. He was a simple and kind person, but not stupid. Of course, he could see that Lin Qun was escorting him all the way. He looked at Lin Qun and said solemnly, "Brother Lin, thank you." Seeing his excitement, Lin Qun waved his hand and said, "It's nothing, I'm also helping myself. This is a battle of civilizations. If I really fight against a group of bastions, I can only run away. If you can become stronger and cooperate with me, it will also improve my strength in disguise." Li Ji gained 3 contribution points, and Lin Qun had already gained 8 contribution points. At this time, Kan Yingying, who was watching from the side, suddenly said, "It seems that a large group of bastion troops are coming." Lin Qun changed color slightly. The 3 of them hid nearby, left from another exit of the alley, and hid in a 7-story residential building on one side. Soon, they saw the regular army of bastion. There were more than 50 of them, 2 low-altitude airships, and they seemed to be patrolling and passing by. But when they found the bodies of the bastions killed by Lin Qun and his men in the alley, they all stopped and divided into 2 teams to search around. The average combat power of the bastion regular army was higher than that of its armed personnel. 50 plus 2 military boats, Lin Qun was no match for them, and could only continue to move to the upper floors of the residential building and hide. The 3 of them lay dormant here, waiting for the bastion army to leave. The most recent time, a group of bastions passed by right below the residential building where they were. Even Lin Qun's heart was in his throat. Fortunately, they did not go upstairs. Lin Qun retracted his gaze, exhaled, and turned his head, only to find that Li Ji had something similar to a hand cannon in his hand, which was properly mounted on his hand. It was silver in color, and looked like a cool black technology. Lin Qun looked strange, and lowered his voice. "Is this the treasure worth 10 contribution points?" Li Ji smiled, and put it on his hand. It was just the right size, and could be fixed. He said, "Brother, this is an electromagnetic amplifier generator. With this thing, the power of my ability can be doubled directly, and the range can also be doubled. Moreover, this thing can be used, even if my ability is exhausted. There is a built-in battery inside, which can fire 2 arc cannons. The battery is a bit expensive, 1 contribution point per dollar." Lin Qun's eyes lit up when he heard it. This is really a good thing, which can be called black technology. It is also very compatible with Li Ji's ability, and is a great help to Li Ji. No wonder Li Ji has been thinking about saving it to exchange for this thing. It is really good. But it is not so useful for Lin Qun. His headshot female skill is far better than the bonus that this weapon can provide. It is better to recharge and draw cards, or buy energy recovery potions than to buy this weapon or exchange batteries with contribution points. Lin Qun's powerful and unique ability makes these low value weapons useless to him, which is why he has not exchanged too many weapons so far. Instead of exchanging weapons, it is better to spend contribution points on your own skills. But the contribution point mall is still very powerful. Conventional weapons and black technology equipment, as long as you have enough contribution points, you can exchange them to improve your combat effectiveness. They were trapped here, and Li Ji just exchanged this thing for equipment, and got familiar with it first. Qian Yingying looked at it with some envy in her eyes. She only had 1 contribution point, and couldn't exchange anything. 10 contribution points was an unimaginable astronomical figure for her. Afterwards, Li Ji also tested his new weapon. His ability was combined with the hand cannon, and the range of the arc emitted was more than twice as long as before, and the power was greatly enhanced. At a distance of more than 10 meters, it blew up half of the body of a Bakatan. Li Ji was excited. Brother Lin, I also have the ability to kill Bakatans instantly. Lin Qun poured cold water on him. You'd better increase your dark energy limit first, so that you can fire more shots, or prepare some dark energy recovery potions. I remember there are some in the contribution point mall. 1 contribution point can be exchanged for 1 bottle, which can restore 2 points of dark energy. Li Ji chuckled. I understand. At this time, there was a fierce exchange of fire in front of them. They looked at each other and quietly moved forward to see if they could kill lone or small groups of Bakatans. Chapter 54. That's it. Lin Qun was the fastest, and he jumped over the bodies of the Bakatan armed personnel they had just killed on the ground and took the lead. Before Li Ji and others behind him could see the situation clearly, they saw Lin Qun, who had gone out in front, hurried back again, with a nervous look and a very ugly face, saying, "Go, this is not a small force, it is the regular army of Bakatan." Near the survivors' base, humans were hunting Bakatan people, and Bakatan people were also hunting humans here. The parties were mixed, and the armies were also intertwined. They were outside, and they had to be most careful about this situation. Once they were bitten to death by the Bakatan army, it would be a fight to the death. Lin Qun and his men usually attacked the armed personnel of Bakatan. Their current strength was not enough to engage in a firefight with the regular army of Bakatan. There was a huge gap between the firepower and strength of those regular armies and those of the Bakatan armed personnel. The most critical thing was the gap in numbers and mobility. At the moment, they quickly retreated and hid nearby. But the Bakatan army seemed to have exchanged fire with the military nearby, with artillery fire everywhere. What was even more terrifying was that a terrifying figure rose from the center of the Bakatan army, with an aura that expanded, as arrogant as a god. Wherever it looked, the ground and buildings collapsed, flew upside down into the sky, and then fell down with a loud bang, with smoke and dust rolling, flooding several surrounding streets. The human troops at that location were wiped out in the blink of an eye. The remaining Bakatan army dispersed like a torrent, attacking from all sides, and sweeping the surrounding streets. It's coming. Seeing it, Lin Qun's pupils instantly turned blood red. He would never forget that Bakatan man in his life. That was Bakayan, the Bakatan commander of the East City Front, with a total contribution point of more than 30,000. He was also the one who killed Jiangbin. Lin Qun's steps paused instinctively. On one side, Li Ji grabbed his arm and gritted his teeth and said, "Brother, don't be impulsive." Voldemort's reason overcame his anger, and Lin Qun stepped back. The smoke and dust were about to submerge their feet. If they ran out now, they could not kill it, and they could only become a tiny one among the countless ants crushed by it. Above the smoke and dust, Bakayan was flying slowly in the air. This human city was like its territory. It was flying in the air, as if no one was around, looking down from a high place. Every human it saw was strangled by it instantly. Lin Qun and his friends could not run anymore, and had to find a place to hide. Lin Qun kicked open the iron door of a small Western-style building, built in the last century, and rushed in with everyone to hide. He knew very well the gap between him and that monster. After arriving at the survivors' base, just today during the day, Wang Desheng handed Lin Qun a message, which was the detailed intelligence about Bakayan he obtained from the military. Bakayan is the blood of the Bakatan royal family, a natural telekinetic master, who once participated in a civilization war and survived.
He is an extremely powerful warrior and telekinetic master of the Bastion civilization, and his level is said to be above level 40. For Lin Qun now, it is a chasm like a natural moat. If they meet head on, all three of them will die. Of course, even a powerful individual, like it, cannot attack the survivor base alone, and will be killed by the intensive firepower of the military, but in the area outside the survivor base, no human can compete with it. But in the external battlefield and small-scale local battlefields, it is a god wherever it goes. Humans can only flee. There is no way. The human population in the Magic City is shrinking. Fortunately, it does not seem to have discovered Lin Qun, and it slowly floats over the 2 streets outside the building, where they are hiding. Lin Qun opened a corner of the curtain, and did not even dare to observe it more, for fear that it would discover his gaze. According to the existing information, Bastion telekinetic masters have extremely keen perceptions, and the stronger they are, the keener their perceptions. Li Ji, who was checking the situation in the building, suddenly whispered, "Brother, there are people upstairs." At this time, they were on the 2nd floor, and there was a group of survivors hiding on the 3rd floor. There were 8 people, all in a very bad state. Seeing Lin Qun and the others coming up, they all cast a vigilant look. Lin Qun glanced at them, and sat down on the other side of the same floor with Li Ji and the others, alerting them to their kind, and waiting for the Bastion army to leave completely. Lin Qun was also observing them. This seemed to be a group of survivors who were going to the survivor base. They were all in a very bad state, and had nothing on them. They were roughly divided into several groups, 2 old men, a family of 3, and 2 bodyguards who seemed to be protecting a handsome young man who looked very bookish. After staring at the young man for a while, Lin Qun didn't see anything, but Qian Ying suddenly said, "That person seems to be a little star. I seem to have seen him on TV. His name is, what is it?" The room was quiet, and even the lowest voice could be heard. There was an obvious glance over there. Qian Ying didn't say anything, and she didn't want to cause trouble. Lin Qun didn't know any celebrities, and he wasn't surprised to meet any celebrities in such a prosperous place as Magic City. But now, the doomsday is coming, and the war of civilizations has begun. It doesn't matter whether they are celebrities or not. Lin Qun just came to the window and silently observed the situation below. As soon as the Bastion army left, they left here immediately. At the same time, he also used the concentration technique to speed up the recovery of energy and maintain the best combat power. But the survivors over there were faintly agitated. The person who looked like a little star took out a bag of breakfast biscuits. The survivors on their side all swallowed hard, and a girl asked timidly, "Can you give me one? I haven't eaten for more than a day." They were not Lin Qun. They were all survivors who fled in a panic. It was not easy to get here alive. They had no food on them, and had been hungry for a long time. Lin Qun cast a glance. The little star just shook his head, without any intention of sharing. There was only half a bag of breakfast biscuits left. He took out 4 pieces from it, 2 for himself, and 1 for each of his bodyguards. The others watched eagerly, but they could only watch. Even if they had any ideas, they could only stay away from the 2 bodyguards. He also glanced at Lin Qun with a wary look in his eyes, obviously thinking that Lin Qun and his friends were ordinary survivors, and worried that they were thinking about his cookies. Because Lin Qun and his friends were all carrying guns, Lin Qun was not so bored. They had the strength, and they had no shortage of supplies. They came out to hunt the Bastions, and carried supplies with them. In order to prevent this guy from thinking that they would rob them and cause unnecessary trouble, Lin Qun thought about it, and simply took out 3 sausages from Li Ji's backpack. The young star's eyes suddenly became straight. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, Card Draw. C rank items. 3 sausages were shown, and the sound of swallowing saliva immediately rang out in the quiet room. The survivors watched eagerly, drooling. But they didn't dare to do anything, because Lin Qun and his team put their guns on the ground out of caution. These survivors were all in a mess, and they didn't awaken any good talents, and they didn't have any weapons on them. except for the 2 bodyguards around the little star, who had 2 guns. The others had no qualifications to challenge Lin Qun and his team. The little star and his 2 bodyguards were silent when they saw this scene. I just felt that the dry breakfast biscuits in my hand were not fragrant instantly. The Bakatans were still wandering around. This group of Bakatans seemed to be carrying thermal sensing equipment, but the gunshots were concentrated outside a street. They were attracted by the survivors in that direction and were gathering there. Therefore, Lin Qun and his team were relatively safe here, so they simply took this opportunity to eat, replenish their physical strength, and restore their consumed energy and dark energy. Li Ji took out bread and water again, and everyone feasted. While eating, Lin Qun spread out the detailed map of the magic city that he bought from a cookie at the survivor base, and determined the next route. He had to stagger with the main forces of the Bakatan and the military as much as possible. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to hunt for contribution points, but he would also be exposed. He was already level 7, and ordinary Bakatan armed personnel were no match for him. But at this stage, Lin Qun was still unable to fight against the human wave tactics and the steel torrent. In the regional rankings, Lin Qun had rushed back to the 3rd place. In front of him, Xia King actually fell down and was already in the 6th place. The 1st place was still Qiza Chun, and the 2nd place became another military soldier. It was said that Xia King was cooperating with the experts at the survivor base to do some scientific research, which caused her speed of obtaining contribution points to plummet. If he could maintain the 3rd place, he could get 10 contribution points for nothing, which was equivalent to a chance to draw a card. Lin Qun was thinking, and footsteps approached. He looked up vigilantly and saw that the little star was walking over with 2 people. Lin Qun narrowed his eyes instantly, put down the food and map in his hand, and Li Ji and Kan Yingying also reached for their weapons. The little star waved his hands again and again. Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. I have no ill intentions. I just want to ask, can you give me one of your sausages? I'm not asking for it for nothing. Looking at you, are you going to the 6th prison too? So are we, and I know someone in the 6th prison, a big shot in the survivor base. When we get there, I can give you a box of sausages. Li Ji was surprised to hear this. A box of sausages, in the overcrowded and scarce survivor base, can be exchanged for a girl, to accompany you for a whole year. And all postures and gamma play can be unlocked. What a big tone. Do you know what a box of sausages means now? The little star said, I'm Wang Han, you may not know me, but I'm also a well-known public figure. I don't need to lie to you. Upon hearing the name, Kan Yingying showed a surprised expression. Obviously, she was finally reminded of who this little star is. Lin Qun believed what Wang Han said. He could see that this little star had little combat power and relied entirely on his 2 bodyguards. It's the end of the world, and the 2 bodyguards are still willing to follow him. There must be benefits. This pie is not fake. But Lin Qun smiled and shook his head, saying, there is no need for that. He just wanted to hunt the Bakatans quietly and didn't want to have anything to do with any big shots. Moreover, with his exaggerated regional ranking results, if he wanted to have any relationship, as long as this was exposed, a big shot would come to him in person. Wang Han was stunned for a moment, a little disappointed, but he didn't say anything. His 2 bodyguards were a little unhappy, and one of them said, these supplies of yours were also picked up by luck in a supermarket on the road, right? When you arrive at the survivor base, how many days will these supplies last? If you don't know anyone, you won't be able to survive there. Of course, you may have some strength, but I'm a D-level talent awakener. You can use sausage to protect me. The bodyguard was also tempted and wanted to eat sausage. But unfortunately, Lin Qun just shook his head. Lin Qun has no shortage of supplies, let alone military force. He doesn't want to have any intersection with unnecessary people, waste time, and may cause unnecessary trouble. Li Ji and Kan Yingying also put their hands on their weapons and didn't speak. Lin Qun's meaning is what they mean. Although Kan Yingying recognized this Wang Han, she was not his fan. She knew where she was now, so she would not say anything more. In the end, Wang Han pulled his bodyguard, shook his head, and sat back on the other side. Wang Han was turned away, and the other ordinary survivors had nothing to say. They could only watch and envy the rich food of Lin Qun and others.
Wang Han also sat in the corner, eating dry biscuits silently. Li Ji only sighed in a low voice. Times have really changed. Celebrities are so miserable. Their privileges have collapsed. Lin Qun squinted at him and said, "What's miserable? They have connections to rely on when they get to the survivor base. Do you have any?" Li Ji chuckled and said, "Brother, I rely on you. You guy." Lin Qun said unhappily, "Who said before that they would protect me?" Lin Qun moved his eyes and found that Wang Han was still looking at him. When their eyes met, Wang Han was not very dissatisfied. He did not share supplies with other survivors, and he seemed to understand, while Lin Qun did not give him supplies. It was just that his understanding might be different from what Lin Qun actually thought. He even smiled at Lin Qun and looked away. Time passed slowly. Lin Qun determined the route, but he could not take the next step for the time being. He changed his mind and simply spent the 10 contribution points he had just obtained to draw a card. The card slowly emerged. Lin Qun took a look at it and was stunned for a moment. He took another look, but his eyes lit up. I was dumbfounded because this card was a one-time experience card, but I was shining because the effect of this card was extremely powerful. Name: Time Belt. Type: item card grade, C level. Effect: this is a slender belt with excellent texture. It contains a mysterious macro time and space device, which allows the user to go back 20 seconds. Cooldown: 72 hours or deduct a point of energy limit. Do you want to materialize? C level item. Go back in time. Lin Qun almost stood up from his position. 20 seconds in a life and death battle can be called a miracle and can even reverse life and death and victory and defeat. This is a 4-dimensional equipment. However, in the same way, its cooldown time is about 3 days. It can only be used once. If you want to use it frequently, you need to deduct the energy limit. That is the upper limit. Lin Qun realized that perhaps because of this thing is a C-level item. However, with such an amazing effect, once every 3 days is also enough. Lin Qun quietly materialized. The belt was indeed a bit thin, and even looked like it was used by women. However, after thinking for a long time, he could not figure out which fantasy world the belt came from at this time, so he just carefully put it away. This is an important trump card, and even like the resurrection of the dead, it can be of great use at critical moments. At this time, outside, the Bastion army finally left. After wandering for a while, they were attracted by the battlefield in another direction, and rushed to that direction to join the battle. Lin Qun looked out through the window, and Bastion also flew over there, and soon became an invisible dot in the field of vision. Night is the most intense time for humans and Bastions to fight. It is often quieter during the day. Although the 13 survivor bases have absorbed millions of survivors, the population of the Magic City is too large. Now there are still a large number of survivors scattered in various urban areas, some hiding everywhere, or trying to get closer to the survivor base. Lin Qun and others were not in a hurry to leave. Since they had rested, they would rest, and set off again, and wait for their energy to rise, so as not to have to exchange blue bottles all the time. Wang Han and the others were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, the family of 3 went downstairs first. They were obviously restless. This place was not far from the survivor base of the 6th prison. Ordinary survivors wanted to hurry and get there as soon as possible. But not long after they went downstairs, they ran back again, panicked and terrified. Monster! There is a monster! Chapter 56: The Power of Fire Talisman. Seeing this scene, Lin Qun's first reaction was, are the Bastions coming back? But he soon realized that something was wrong. The Bastions had just left. How could they come back? Moreover, if they were really Bastions, why were they shouting monsters? Lin Qun noticed that the 3 people in the family went downstairs, but now only the mother was left holding the child, covered in blood, and their father was gone. Their screams were shrill, and everyone in the room stood up. Li Ji took a step forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Lin Qun. They came up later and were closest to the stairs. The mother was in a panic and ran up, but she lost her balance and fell in front of Lin Qun and the others. At this time, an inhuman howl came from behind the mother. It turned out that it was not a Bastion. Lin Qun had never seen anything like it. It was like a dark shadow, without obvious organ outlines. Its body twisted unsteadily, but it was able to walk on the stairs. Every time it took a step forward, something like a foot would extend from its twisting body, step on the ground, and quickly disappear, and then quickly pop out again. It was extremely fast. From the depths of the shadow, there was a kind of shrill howl like a beast. Qian Yingying fired at the first moment. The bullet hit its dark mass. It just paused under the influence of the force, but it seemed not to be injured at all. Instead, it accelerated and rushed forward at high speed. Almost in an instant, it arrived in front of Lin Qun and Li Ji. The dark mass of matter suddenly opened, forming a huge mouth like a mouth, with scalloped flesh and blood, and dense teeth, each of which was more than 10 centimeters long. This mouth alone could swallow half an adult. Its first target was the mother and child, who fell on the ground. A series of exclamations rang out in the room. What is this? Lin Qun was also a little frightened. He had never seen this thing before, so he didn't dare to be careless. He moved his eyes and blew up the place above its mouth. According to the common sense of Blue Star, the place above the mouth should be the head. There was a bang. Lin Qun succeeded. Its physical fitness was less than 42. But it didn't die. Lin Qun looked down, and half of the monster's body and half of its mouth exploded. The black substance peeled off from its body, and something like clouds or particles splashed on the back half of the wall. But it didn't die, and it was even alive and well. The dark body twisted for a while, and in the blink of an eye, it formed a bloody mouth that could swallow half a person. It kicked the ground fiercely, and rushed directly towards Lin Qun and the others. Lin Qun's color changed. Wrong position? Where should it be blown? This guy doesn't have significant and important organs in the human sense. Now is not the time to think. He moved his eyes and broke another hole in the monster, but still failed to kill it. Its body was knocked to the ground, and it howled and pounced on them again. Brother, be careful. Li Ji's face changed, and he suddenly pulled Lin Qun, trying to use his body to block Lin Qun in front of him. This was his instinct. Qian Yingying screamed in fear, but Lin Qun's reaction was much faster than Li Ji's. His attributes completely crushed Li Ji's. Therefore, Li Ji failed to pull him, but Lin Qun had already pulled him all the way out, avoiding the attacks along the way. At this time, Wang Han and his two bodyguards all stood up, and the two bodyguards both took action. The ability of the D-level bodyguard was interesting, and it seemed to be similar to the ability of the lion's roar. He opened his mouth and shouted, and actually formed a wave of air, blowing the surrounding things all over the ground, and even the cabinet fell to the ground. But his trick didn't work on the strange monster. It didn't move in the strong wind, broke through the strong wind, and directly rode on the phase 2 output. The bodyguard was stunned. He reacted quickly enough. The situation was not right, so he ran away immediately, and he didn't care about Wang Han. Seeing this, Wang Han also turned around and ran wildly. On this floor, a group of survivors were instantly blown into a mess. The shadowy monster seemed to be immortal, running around everywhere. With its bloody mouth, a hapless survivor was bitten to only half of his body. What the hell is this? Li Ji roared, stood up, and prepared to try with his hand cannon, but the monster moved too fast, and he couldn't aim at all. Moreover, the monster seemed to notice it, turned his head, and rushed towards Li Ji again. Li Ji's face changed, but at this moment, he only felt a slight heat on the right side of his body. The next second, the whole floor was illuminated. A terrifying fireball formed behind Li Ji, flew out with his body, and hit the monster in the face. The dark monster instantly turned into a big fireball, howling crazily, and the dark matter on its body evaporated like smoke, and was blown to death by this fireball. Li Ji swallowed hard, turned his head slowly in slow motion, and looked at Lin Qun behind him, with an expression, as if he was looking at a monster. Brother, where did you get the fireball? At this time, everyone in the field focused their attention on Lin Qun. They all looked like they were looking at some extraordinary guy. And Lin Qun was actually a little confused. He didn't expect that this fire talisman was so exaggerated and powerful. The so-called fire attack is directly a big fireball as tall as a person. Not to mention such a monster, even an ordinary Bastion airship can be blown up. This is actually the first time that Lin Qun has used a fire talisman. After all, there are only 3 in total, and it is better not to use it if you can. But you don't know how powerful it is until you use it. Lin Qun suppressed his surprise and took a look at the embers on the ground. The monster had completely turned to ashes. He gained 1 contribution point and 100 experience points. This is also a creature of an alien civilization. However, it seems that it is not a bastion, and they have never seen such a monster. Then, he glanced at everyone in the room, was silent for a moment, turned around and left. Li Ji and Kan Yingying looked at each other and followed him downstairs. Li Ji was still amazed. Brother Niu chap, your big fireball is so cool. By the way, what is that monster? Why have I never seen it? Is it the secret weapon of the bastion people? In response, Lin Qun just shook his head. He felt that this thing was definitely not a creature of the bastion family. He instinctively thought of the day when the countdown ended. He had caught a glimpse of the vortex and giant shadow that overwhelmed the entire magic city. Although it had no chance to enter the magic city due to the blockade of the bastion people, it seemed that something still fell into the vortex at that time. The situation in the magic city is getting more and more complicated. Lin Qun said, we have to be careful. Also, I'm higher level than you, and my attributes are higher than yours. What are you doing in front of me? Don't you want to go home to see your parents? Yes, of course I do. But when the monster pounced on you, I didn't think much about it. Li Ji touched his head and laughed. I'm just thinking about protecting you, brother. Lin Qun stopped and looked at this guy's silly look. The reaction at that moment was Li Ji's instinct. He wanted to protect himself and even forgot that he might also be bitten off half of his body by the monster. Lin Qun sighed. Of course, I will take you away from the magic city and take you back to Anshan. If your parents are still alive, I will help you find them. It's a deal, brother. Behind him, Li Ji looked at Lin Qun's back with a complicated look. During this period of time, he had been following Lin Qun, so he could naturally notice that Lin Qun seemed to have more than one ability. He was very surprised and puzzled, and didn't know how Lin Qun did it. But Li Ji didn't ask in the end. He respected Lin Qun, and if Lin Qun didn't want to say it, he wouldn't ask. As for others like Kan Yingying, their relationship was not as good as Lin Qun and Li Ji, so they couldn't ask more questions. Even if they had doubts, they kept silent and buried them deep in their hearts. The 3 of them left here quickly, and in the building, the remaining survivors, especially Wang Han and the D-level bodyguard, were still in a state of confusion and staring at each other and were greatly shocked by what had just happened. After a long while, the D-level bodyguard murmured, damn, he was killed by a fireball. That guy is a big shot. I said I would protect him. Am I not a big joke? I think we are wrong. They are not survivors who went to the survivor base like us. They are probably the real strong ones who came out of the survivor base to hunt the bastions. It's not that they don't believe I can give them a box of sausages, but they don't care about the conditions I offer. Wang Han showed a thoughtful expression. No, that's not right. The fireball made too much noise just now. The bastions might hear the news and come here. We have to leave quickly. Chapter 57 I'm Human. In the small Western-style building, the survivors left one after another. The mother picked up her child. Her expression was dazed for a while, and she became strong, and finally went downstairs slowly. She lost her husband, but she still had to work hard to survive for her child. Wang Han stood downstairs and turned his head to take a last look. There was some expectation in his eyes. He knew that he and the unknown strong man would definitely meet again in the survivor base of the 6th prison. At the same time, Lin Qun and his team had slipped forward and moved to the next location. Lin Qun had never been so familiar with the terrain of the suburban area of the east city of the magic city, and now he knew it by heart. Here, they encountered a small group of bastions again and quickly strangled them. Lin Qun's ranking was stable in the 3rd place. At the same time, he also carefully put away the other 2 fire talismans. This thing is powerful and should be used in the right place. Today is just the beginning. Next, he will hunt the bastions with all his strength. With books, it is long. Without books, it is short. June 21st, 1751. Magic City, East City. The battle between humans and bastion civilization in the Magic City is entering a new stalemate stage. The main forces of both sides no longer collide. The battlefield spreads from the central city to the other 4 directions of the Magic City. Small-scale conflicts break out everywhere, and Bakatans and humans continue to exchange fierce fire in the city. In the past few days, Lin Qun hid during the day and went out at night. He and Li Ji and Li Xing kept going back and forth between the survivor base and the East City area, making moves everywhere, turning into Laoyan 13, and hunting Bakatans everywhere with the cover of frequent small-scale conflicts between the Federal Army and the Bakatans. Lin Qun's contribution points began to rise rapidly. In this process, he consumed another concentration pill, and there were 2 concentration pills left in his hand. Not only that, Lin Qun's concentration technique has been achieved, and it has almost become passive. It is always in the activation state, and it can also continuously restore energy in battle, accumulating little by little. This directly saves Lin Qun a large amount of contribution points. Li Ji, Li Xing and others did not have the energy of Lin Qun. Lin Qun could fight 3 times a day, but they could not. They had to take turns in groups of 2 to keep up with Lin Qun's pace. But they also gained benefits. Although most of the Bakatans were killed by Lin Qun, they could still gain something. Not only that, they followed Lin Qun, and the safety factor was extremely high. They had no danger along the way. Even Zhao Wen had gained 2 contribution points from nothing. And 1 survivor base after another sprang up in this process. The Federal Magic City Army established survivor bases in all 4 major urban areas of the East, West, South, and North. On June 20th, the number of existing survivor bases in the Magic City had reached 13, and more than 3 million people were accommodated. There were 3 survivor bases in the East City alone. The Magic City 6th Prison Survivor Base is the Magic City's 3rd survivor base. The Magic City Military Hospital Survivor Base is the Magic City's 5th survivor base. The Magic City Xing Square Survivor Base is the Magic City's 9th survivor base. These 3 survivor bases echoed each other from a distance, forming a pincer attack. Survivor bases dotted the messy battlefield of the Demon City like stars. The human military used these 13 survivor bases as a front to fight against the Bakatans. The battle was fierce and back and forth. The Bakatans spent a lot of money to block the Demon City. At this moment, only these 2 civilizations were playing a game. It was a life and death battle. The Bakatans had been constantly deploying troops. They had established a base camp in the central city. A steady stream of Bakatans passed through the space cracks, gathered in the central city, and continued to be deployed in various regional battlefields. Everyone knew that before the 30-day blockade deadline, the Bakatans would kill all the humans in the Demon City at all costs and turn the 20 million humans in the Demon City into their contribution points. Only in this way could they justify the 5 million contribution points they spent. Of course, these were all top-level changes, and Lin Qun was not aware of them now. He didn't have time to understand too much. In the past few days, he was doing his best to improve himself, accumulate enough contribution points, and strive for a higher ranking. In more than 3 days, Lin Qun ranked 3rd, 5th, and 4th, and remained in the top 5. His ID, Ying, became the subject of discussion among many people in the survivor base. Because more strong people emerged in these days, the rankings of the Magic City ranking and the regional ranking have been changing. For example, Liuiui has fallen from the 5th to the 9th place at the beginning, and King has completely fallen from the 2nd place due to cooperating with the military action, and is also hovering between the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Qizichuan has been stable, but there is news that he is wandering on the edge of Zhangcheng District and Dancheng District, and may leave the Dancheng District at any time. In this regard, Lin Qun said that he has been waiting. Because Qizichuan left, he can move up 1 place in order and get a lot of settlement contribution points out of thin air. But unfortunately, at least Qizichuan has been there for more than 3 days. In addition to him, there is another mysterious guy, whose ideas give me back my work, who has emerged as a dark horse, and is stable in the 2nd place, and is very powerful. The top 10 kept changing, and the latter was even more so. As time went by, many people tried to go out to fight the Bakatans, or go out to search for supplies. There were too many people in the survivor base, and the supplies distributed by the military every day could only ensure that people would not starve to death. If you want to eat enough and live well, you have to go to the city, to take risks and find ways. Some people died in the process, but some people grew up, like Lin Qun, who had to go out every day and live in a new attitude under the doomsday. This led to the emergence of many people, and the rankings changed in real time. In this case, it is still surprising that Lin Qun, the Night Shadow, has been stable in the top 5. People were forced to survive, and there was no entertainment in the survivor base, so this ranking became the topic of conversation and the focus of discussion. Lin Qun is the focus, but in Lin Qun's eyes, there is also a focus in his eyes. The global battlefield has been completely opened, and the global ranking has appeared. The Bakatens can't even enter the top 10 of the global ranking, and humans are even more so. But on the 19th, a human warrior with the ID I'm Human broke into the top 100 and ranked 100th in the world with 26,000 contribution points. This caused an uproar in the blocked Magic City. Lin Qun was also shocked. More than 26,000 contribution points, which means that the opponent killed more than 20,000 aliens in more than 6 days. This is a real strong man. Among the names of aliens, the ID I'm Human makes people feel indescribable. There is hope, sadness, excitement, and pride. Humans also have strong people and can kill aliens like slaughtering dogs. Lin Qun also yearns for it deeply. When can he have 20,000 contribution points? And what he can hardly imagine is, what is the situation outside the Magic City? From those rolling global rankings, the outside world seems to have been dark and bloody like hell. After 30 days, if he can survive and leave the Magic City, what will he face? Lin Qun didn't know, and now no one could answer his question. The same doubts and anxieties were buried deep in everyone's heart, and in the end they could only temporarily suppress them and give priority to the present. These days, Lin Qun did the same. He hunted non-stop, killed many Bakatens, and finally reached level 8, and also accumulated a lot of experience to level 9. The panel attributes have been comprehensively improved again. Today I'm on the 3rd wheel recommendation. Dear readers, please support me and go for the 4th wheel. Thank you, Liangcha. Chapter 58 Upgrading the Headshot Girl Skill. Name, Lin Qun. Level 8, 5300/7000. Strength 15 agility, 15 constitution, 21 stamina, 26/26. Reminder, the standard value of all the above data for ordinary people is 10. Talent, card draw bonus ability. Current card draw times remaining 0. Current remaining contribution points 107. After many days of hard work, the total number of contribution points exceeded 100, and Lin Qun was ready to upgrade the headshot female ability. Of course, he did not upgrade outside, but returned to the survivor base. At this time, the time came to 0:06, and today's ranking was also settled. Yesterday's ranking has been locked. Congratulations, Yang. You are ranked 3rd in the regional ranking Modu East and LT City Warzone. Award 10 civilization contribution points. 10 contribution points were credited, and Lin Qun's total contribution points reached an unprecedented 117 points. With the help of the concentration technique, Lin Qun saved countless blue bottles. The net contribution points from hunting Bakatens far exceeded before, and the speed of obtaining them was getting faster and faster. Lin Qun and his cell were located in the inner part, so it was quite quiet. Back in the cell, Li Xing and Zhao Wen were both guarding here. There were too many people recently, and those who stayed behind didn't dare to run around. They were afraid that someone would take advantage of them. Li Xing stood up and said, "Boss, today Fan Wenshou and subordinate Lu Hui came." Lu Hui. Lin Qun was a little confused by the name. It's the skinny one. Lin Qun then realized that this was the name of the skinny man. He frowned. What is he here for? He should come to win me over. Now Fan Wenshou is with Ni Wensheng, and they are doing very well. They have no shortage of supplies and manpower, but he is dependent on Ni Wensheng after all. He thinks I'm a master and wants to pull me over so that he can further get rid of Ni Wensheng's control. But I didn't agree. Li Xing said. From what he said, he seems to want to be a doomsday businessman in the survivor base. Li Ji said, although I don't like Fan Wenquan very much, I have to say that he is still a very powerful person. Li Xing, you were equivalent to scolding him in front of him before, but he was willing to visit him 3 times. Li Xing touched his nose, how could I? Qian Yingying said softly, there is a reason why he can do well everywhere. This person is very smart, and he thinks that you, Li Xing, are a master. He will not break up with you unless it is absolutely necessary. Lin Qun also had some feelings. Whether Fan Wenquan was a good guy or a bad guy, he was indeed smart. He deserved to be a leader outside before the doomsday. A capable person can find a way to survive anywhere. These days, Fan Wenquan gathered a lot of people in the survivor base and managed it very well. He himself had no strength, but he successfully found another way to survive. Li Ji said, this Fan Wenquan, the doomsday business, he has figured it out. Fan Wenquan's path is different from Th's. Lin Qun and his friends are improving their own strength, while Fan Wenquan relies on his connections. But from Lin Qun's point of view, even if Fan Wenquan becomes a doomsday businessman, he still has to rely on the survivor base to exist. If the survivor base is destroyed, no matter how hard he tries, it will be in vain, and this is his helplessness. If there is enough time, even if the survivor base is destroyed, it is possible to survive. Back to the survivor base, completely safe, Lin Qun came to the corner of the room and consumed the offering points to upgrade his headshot female skill. As before, there was no process for the upgrade, and Lin Qun, the person involved, didn't feel anything. But his skill description has changed dramatically. Skills, bang skill level, level 2, within a radius of 50 meters with the player as the center, the player can use this skill to destroy any part of the carbon-based life form by looking at the target. This skill has reached level 2, and its derivative function is to be able to carry out targeted blasting of objects with a volume of 8 cubic centimeters, the current upper limit of the target's physical fitness, that can be directly blasted. 46. When this skill is used on an enemy with a physical fitness exceeding this value, the effect will decrease. Note, this skill will provide you with 2 points of physical fitness bonus and 2 points of energy bonus success. Lin Qun's panel attributes also changed instantly. This time, the physical fitness bonus of the headshot girl skill increased from 1 to 2, and there was an additional 2 points of energy bonus. Lin Qun's physical fitness has reached 23 points, and his energy is an astonishing 28 points. He can headshot any target with a physical fitness below 46. With 28 points of energy, if he doesn't care about his life, he can headshot 14 times in a row. What Lin Qun cares about most is the increase in attack distance. Directly increased by 40 meters. From the original 10 meters, it reached 50. This is the most critical and strongest improvement of this skill. 50 meters and 10 meters. That is a huge gap, which means that Lin Qun can use Liao Yin 13's talent at a safer distance to achieve sniping. And from this point of view, this is not the limit. There is still room for improvement and the possibility of upgrading this skill. Lin Qun noticed that the next upgrade will require 200 contribution points. The next upgrade will definitely increase the headshot distance, and the increase will definitely exceed 40 meters. In this way, if he can achieve 1000 meter sniping, then he really has found a commanding height and can headshot the Bacatans at will, making him invincible, and the enemy can't even find his position. That will be true concealment. As long as the distance is far enough, the only shortcoming of his skill will be made up. Moreover, Lin Qun noticed that this upgrade has an additional double effect, and objects with a volume of 8 cubic centimeters can be exploded. This means that this ability is no longer limited to carbon-based organisms starting from the second level. He even tried it on purpose, found a small brick, and released the skill in an empty place. It still took 2 points of energy to shatter the brick in an instant. This power is more powerful than ordinary bullets. Sure enough, with further upgrades, the headshot girl skill will not only be limited to blowing up the bodies of carbon-based creatures, but can also break everything. With further upgrades, the size of objects that can be blown up at will should increase. A distance of 50 meters will greatly improve Lin Qun's survivability and combat effectiveness. And this new blasting application can make his ability application more abundant. Lin Qun's eyes moved. There are still 17 contribution points. He rubbed his hands, activated the skill, and drew a card. 10 contribution points were deducted. Lin Qun sat in the corner, his lips moving, muttering incantations. I will definitely get a good card. I will definitely get a top card. I'm possessed by the European Emperor. I'm possessed by the European Emperor. The non-chiefs will retreat. The non-chiefs will retreat. His voice was very low and was not heard by others. Soon, the card appeared. Lin Qun looked over with some surprise. Name, raw beef 1000G. Type, supplies card. Description, use this item card to get 1000G of raw beef, the fresh kind. But it needs to be cooked before it can be eaten. Is it materialized? This is a brand new card type. Supplies card. Is it supplies? 2 pounds of raw beef. This is a valuable item in the survivor base, but it is in short supply. After the outbreak of the apocalypse, few of these survivors here have eaten meat. People can't survive. Who can take care of those livestock? I'm afraid even the top leaders of the survivor base don't have fresh beef. Taking out these 2 pounds of beef is enough to make everyone in the survivor base crazy. No, you have to be careful when eating this thing. If you let the hungry survivors scramble for it, Lin Qun is not afraid, but he is not bored enough to make trouble for himself. Maybe he can find a place where no one is to stew beef. It's too late today, and Lin Qun and his friends have eaten it, so it's definitely not possible today. Lin Qun looked at the beef on the card screen and his appetite was also excited. Who wouldn't be greedy for bread, biscuits and porridge every day? Looking at the beef drawn on it, Lin Qun instinctively began to think of cumin beef, braised beef, stewed beef. The card he drew actually contained supplies. In this way, he could survive by relying on the card even in a place without food. However, Lin Qun did not materialize it now. Instead, he took the card in his hand and put it in the storage bag. After all, he did not have anything to store fresh raw beef. If he materialized it now, it would definitely go bad. It would not be too late to exchange it when he was ready to eat it. If he could draw beef, he might be able to draw more other supplies, such as fruits and vegetables, that were also in short supply at the end of the world. If he had supply cards, he could hold on even if he was trapped in one place. Chapter 59. Explode the rocket with one glance. The next day, at 6 in the morning, Lin Qun suddenly opened his eyes. Although he had only slept for less than 4 hours, his eyes were like light bulbs, and he was full of energy. This was the terrible bonus brought by 28 points of energy. Unlimited energy. After a short rest, he could be full of energy. On the other hand, Li Ji and Kan Yingying followed Lin Qun all night yesterday. They were always nervous and fighting with the Bacatans. They were exhausted physically and mentally. They were so sleepy that they couldn't wake up at all. Lin Qun was full of energy. His super high energy was not covered up. Once it was fully recovered, his eyes were like light bulbs. And with the blessing of the concentration technique, Lin Qun's energy recovery speed was directly improved by a level, which greatly saved rest time. In addition, his energy limit was high. When his energy was full, 1 hour of sleep a day was completely enough. Lin Qun stood up, packed up, and prepared to set off. Normally, Li Ji and Kan Yingying went out last night, and Li Xing and Zhao Wen should act with Lin Qun during the day today. But Lin Qun got up too early today. Li Xing couldn't get up, and Zhao Wen was also sleepy. When she heard that Lin Qun was going out, she hugged Lin Qun's thigh with her slender arms, and said in a half-awake and half-awake way, "I'm full of energy, carry me out." Seeing that the bare hand was about to touch the unbearable place, Lin Qun quietly pulled out his thigh and went out by himself. At 6 o'clock, most of the survivors in the survivor base were sleeping. This time was actually quieter than at night. Lin Qun came out, but met Lao Wu at the door. He was looking for Lin Qun. "Brother, are you going out?" These days, Lao Wu and Lin Qun have been walking around a lot. Lao Wu is an old man in the survivor base. In addition to his identity as a volunteer, he knows a lot of people and can bring some small conveniences and information to Lin Qun without paying much price. Lin Qun is also happy to get along with him, and the relationship between the two sides is very good. Lao Wu also knows that Lin Qun's team seems to be very cruel. They go out to hunt Bacatans and search for supplies every day, but he is also very smart and never asks about Lin Qun's secrets. Lin Qun said, well, what's wrong? I guess that you might have to go out, so I came here to remind you. Lao Wu smiled, be careful these 2 days. It is said that the Bakatans are going to make a big move. I mean the Bakatans in our Dongcheng district. Lin Qun narrowed his eyes. What big move? He took out 2 sausages from his arms and stuffed them to Lao Wu. Lao Wu quickly took them away, looked around furtively, and then came closer and said, it is said that they are mobilizing troops and concentrating resources to attack a survivor base. Hearing this, Lin Qun was shocked. Where are they going to attack? He immediately thought of yesterday, when they had encountered a group of Bakatans who suddenly ran away, as if they had received some information. At that time, if Lin Qun had not taken action yet, he would have almost thought that it was his domineering aura that scared them away. Humans are now adopting a policy of perseverance to avoid damage as much as possible, but the Bakatans are different. They only have 30 days, and they definitely cannot leave these 13 survivor bases. Moreover, the sooner they defeat the humans and take down the survivor base, the better it will be for them. Therefore, it is not surprising that the Bakatans launched an attack on the survivor base without stopping. Lao Wu did not respond, but smiled and shook his head. I don't know about this, but looking at the current situation, it should not be our bad luck. Lin Qun glanced at him and took out a handful of candies from his arms. This time Lao Wu did not take it, and he said, I really don't know. I just want to remind you, brother, be careful, don't get involved in the Bakatan army. But I told you this today, don't tell others. After speaking, he looked around and left directly. Lin Qun watched his back disappear in the crowd, exhaled, and stepped forward. Lao Wu is a good person. He is never vague about accepting gifts, but he is always reliable in doing what he should do, and never takes more than he should. Lin Qun came out of the survivor base when it was still dawn. He wandered within a radius of 3 kilometers with the survivor base as the center. This is the safe distance he has explored these days. Generally, in this location, there are fewer regular troops of the Bakatan people, and only the Bakatan armed personnel are active. Their numbers are uncertain, their strengths are different, and their combat qualities are also uneven, making them the best targets to attack. Lin Qun came out alone, so he was more cautious, not only to obtain more contribution points, but also to test his upgraded headshot female ability. He hid on the 2nd floor of a roadside residential building, quietly poked his head out, and locked his eyes on several Bakatan armed personnel coming out from the opposite side. They came out from the alley on the opposite street and quickly came to the center of the street. With the help of the chaotic and congested scrapped vehicles on the street, they quickly moved forward and seemed to be looking for human prey. According to his previous ability, at this distance, Lin Qun could not use skills. He had to get closer or even enter the street himself. In that case, he would be very close to these Bakatan armed personnel. While shooting heads, he would also be at risk of exposing himself at any time. And at this moment, Lin Qun lay on the roof and blinked once. A Bakatan who was cautiously moving forward on the street fell down. Then the second and third ones. They panicked, and at first they looked for targets everywhere, but they had no idea where the attack was coming from. Then they just desperately looked for cover, thinking that the enemy was on the same plane as them, but these efforts could not end the massacre, and finally, they went crazy. There was a burly Bakatan man with a distorted face, who seemed to think that the enemy was behind the underground window of a store in front. He rushed out with a rocket launcher and wanted to shoot there. But watching this scene, Lin Qun's heart moved, and he stared at the muzzle of the rocket launcher. At the moment, when the rocket rushed out of the chamber, he activated his ability, exploding objects under 8 cubic centimeters. He couldn't explode the rocket directly, but it was enough to explode wherever he saw it. With a bang, Lin Qun stared at the rocket and exploded the burly Bakatan man, who was directly killed by himself. The last Bakatan man watched his companions die one after another. No matter how they hid, the god of death would quickly visit, revealing an infinite panic expression. It had never seen such a situation. Almost all of them were dead, but they didn't even see the enemy. It had no choice but to run out of the corner screaming, firing wildly around desperately, and finally with a bang, its head exploded and fell to the ground, leaving only a terrified face. The enemies might not have time to find him before they were all killed by him. Lin Qun slowly retracted his gaze. 6 Bakatons, 12 points of energy. He had 16 points left and could launch at least 7 more times. Now, Lin Qun has become a mobile point shooting king. After the upgraded headshot girl's skill release distance increased to 50 meters, Lin Qun became more concealed, allowing him to hunt opponents more covertly. He can choose a more concealed corner at a relatively farther position, with only a pair of eyes exposed, becoming a breathing ghost on the battlefield. Whoever he stares at will die. Like this team of Bakatons, they will never know where Lin Qun is hiding until they die. This is more concealed and silent than firearms. It is difficult to find the trajectory, and there is no noise. Therefore, Lin Qun has never spent his contribution points on exchanging firearms. For him, there is no need. It is enough to have a shotgun and a rocket launcher to range killing weapons to make up for his shortcomings. The new derivative effect is even more terrifying. Not only can it explode biological organisms, but it can also directly make Lin Qun on the battlefield explode anything he stares at. The only flaw is that the volume of the object that can be exploded is too small. Of course, in fact, Lin Qun's own physical fitness and strength attributes are now high enough. If it really comes to close combat, ordinary Bakatons are really no match for him. Chapter 16 New Fairy Set Card. Lin Qun squatted in the building, suppressed his excitement, and reviewed his results. 7 plus 6 equals 13. 13 contribution points. You can draw a card again. Lin Qun was eager to draw a card quickly. Soon, his eyes widened again. This time, the card was painted with a head of black and beautiful hair. Fairy gaze set. It's a hairpin. Name, Fairy hairpin. Type, item card. Description, use this item card to obtain a hairpin from an unknown fairy. It is of excellent quality. Wearing it can increase the rate of turning heads. Use this hairpin to attack others. There is a 60% chance of ignoring the target's physique and causing heavy bleeding. Special note, this card is one of the fairy's new clothes set. Collect the fairy's concentration, embroidered shoes, hairpins, and incense to synthesize the fairy gaze card, and you will get the attention of the fairy. Do you want to materialize? This time, it's a hairpin. This is the second fairy set card Lin Qun has obtained. I just need an embroidered shoe and an aromatherapy to summon the gaze of the fairy. However, this hairpin this time is very effective. Putting aside the function of turning heads when wearing it, this thing is simply a killer. There is a 60% chance of ignoring the target's physical fitness and causing heavy bleeding. This means that, if Lin Qun uses this hairpin to stab a big guy with the physical fitness of 100, it will trigger this effect. If he finds the key point, he may stab the opponent to death in one go. However, in the picture of this card, there are only hair and hairpins, but still no face of this unknown fairy. Lin Qun still doesn't know who this fairy is. In the dimly lit second floor, a golden, exquisite hairpin soon appeared in Lin Qun's palm. The hairpin is about 12 centimeters long, and its end is very sharp. Holding it in the hand, it is also a handy weapon. The most important thing is that this hairpin has an amazing effect. It is a real good thing. In close combat, no matter how strong the enemy is, it is possible to kill the opponent in seconds. It may be very useful at a critical moment. Lin Qun was looking forward to it. After the card set was synthesized, could he know who this fairy was? Lin Qun gathered his mood and continued to hunt. However, it seemed that today, just as Leo Wu said, the Bakatons had made a big move. Those Bakaton armed personnel who were usually very active were obviously less today. Lin Qun didn't encounter many people in the next hour or so. He wandered from 6:30 to 9 o'clock. When the sky was bright, he had gathered 10 contribution points. Lin Qun also held down a lone Bakaton and tested the fairy hairpin. It was really fierce, but his face was a little dark. It took 3 consecutive stabs to trigger it. Lin Qun obviously didn't stab the vital point, but the opponent also bled wildly and eventually died of blood loss. Lin Qun took advantage of his good luck and continued to choose to draw cards. This time, he drew an attribute bonus card. Name, any attribute card. Type, bonus card. Consumable, bonus card grade, F grade. Description, using this card, you can get 5 attribute values that can be allocated at will, which can be used to improve any attribute. You can freely allocate 5 attributes. This is a good thing. Lin Qun's eyes lit up. When he first got this bonus card, he thought it was nothing. But with the improvement of his own attributes, Lin Qun now understands how much the high basic attributes can improve. No matter how powerful the skills are, it is useless if the foundation is not good. Moreover, every time you upgrade, in addition to energy, the basic attributes can only increase by 1 point, and the higher the level, the harder it is to achieve. In other words, super high attributes are difficult to obtain, but he can add attributes by drawing cards, 5 points at a time, which is equivalent to the attribute bonus of 5 levels in a row. This is simply cheating. 5 points at a time. If it can be infinitely added, he can even achieve hundreds or thousands of abnormal attributes at a low level. Others work hard to upgrade to get a pitiful little attribute, and he can add 5 points with 1 card. Lin Qun pondered for a moment, and the 5-point attribute distribution is as follows. Constitution +3, Strength +2. Name, Lin Qun. Level 8, 6600/7000, Strength 17 Agility, 15 Constitution, 26 Stamina, 6/28 Hint. The standard value of all the above data for ordinary people is 10. Lin Qun didn't add all of it to his constitution this time, because his constitution is high enough. The headshot girl skill can kill creatures with 48 points in 1 second. This level is already very terrifying. Most of the Bakatons can be killed. The more powerful ones cannot be compensated by adding these 5 points of constitution. It can be allocated to 2 points of strength, which can directly bring greater changes to Lin Qun. Now that Lin Qun has the concentration technique, the speed of energy recovery has increased, and adding a few points of energy is not very meaningful to him. 17 points of strength, combined with Mario's skills, can reach 25.5. 2.5 times the standard value. Not to mention, that one punch can kill the Bakatons alive. Whether Lin Qun is moving vertically, or performing any other operations, this strength can bring very practical help to Lin Qun. Direct strength improvement. Lin Qun can gain benefits in all aspects of actual combat and non-combat status, which is very practical. If all the points are added to the physique, the improvement of Lin Qun at this stage is almost zero. Instead of forcibly improving the physique, it is better to distribute them evenly and effectively improve the combat power and survivability. The next time you draw an attribute card, add the full amount to the physique. With the improvement of strength, the speed of obtaining contribution points has increased, and the frequency and number of times of Lin Qun's card drawing will increase. Therefore, there are fewer concerns about using cards, and no longer too much entanglement. The main purpose is to use cards and contribution points to actually enhance the efficiency of killing Bakatons. With the improvement of strength, the Bakatons can be killed faster. Don't you have plenty of contribution points and cards? In the War of Civilizations, there are alien races everywhere. It is far less efficient to quickly convert them into combat power snowballs by accumulating big moves. At this moment, Lin Qun's attributes had far exceeded the attributes that the 9th level can theoretically have. Lin Qun wandered around for a while, but he didn't find a single Bakaton. Many survivors who were rushing to the survivor base of the 6th prison were lucky in disguise and passed through this area without any danger. The change in the situation made him a little worried, but he also understood that the Bakatons only had 30 days and could not tolerate the existence of chaos. It was an inevitable choice to concentrate all manpower to quickly disintegrate the human force. These days were just small-scale conflicts in chaos. The real life and death battle for survival has just begun. At that time, he will also stand out from the shadows and fight against the Bakatons with the military, the survivor base, and the entire magic city. Going alone, you don't have to waste time being constrained by others, and you don't have to compete with others to share contribution points. But if a war really starts, the best answer for humans is to stick together. With the power of a civilization, you can fight against a civilization. Every individual in a civilization cannot be immune. Lin Qun stood on the top floor of a low building and looked out the window at the entire magic city. The sky was gradually becoming gloomy, and there was a drizzle falling from the end of the sky, as if covering the whole world with a veil. Lin Qun's heart was pounding, and his pupils reflected the fleet of Bakaton sailing ships far away. Finally, he retracted his gaze, jumped off the building, and returned to the survivor base. When he came back, he saw that the 2 exit gates of the survivor base were open, and the military convoys roared out, in groups. The duty of the garrison at the survivor base is to guard the survivor base, and ensure the safety of the surrounding area. Lin Qun came here, but he had never seen the army deployed on a large scale. What happened? Lin Qun guessed and quickened his pace. After entering the survivor base, Lin Qun discovered that inside the survivor base of the 6th prison, the military broadcast resounded throughout the survivor base. That was the military urgently mobilizing the survivors. Chapter 61 Fight for Survival. My fellow survivors, I'm Fu Kai, commander of the 465th Infantry Division at the 3rd Survivor Base in the Magic City. I'm here to announce a piece of news to you. Our central city front collapsed 36 hours ago, and the Bakatons in various areas began to gather 27 hours ago. They are attacking the survivor bases in various areas. The 9th Survivor Base, Xingxing Square Survivor Base, where our Eastern LT City District is located, has become the target of Bakayan, commander of the Bakaton army in our district. The Bakaton army and armed personnel are gathering at Xingxing Square, and they have issued an ultimatum to our compatriots in Xingxing Square. They declared to the entire Eastern LT City District of the Magic City that they will capture the Xingxing Square Survivor Base within 3 days and massacre all 778,321 humans, including the garrison troops at the Xingxing Square Survivor Base. This is the Bakaton people's contempt for humans and the arrogant barking of the Bakaton people. As a garrison in the Magic City, a soldier in the Huaxia region of the Federation, and a human being, I will never sit idly by and watch the Xingxing Square Survivor Base be destroyed. For the sake of emotion, it is for the blood and dignity of our human race. For reason, the 3 major survivor bases in the Eastern LT City District are mutually supportive. If the Xingxing Square Survivor Base is destroyed, we will be the next one. The fall of a survivor base will inevitably greatly weaken the human power of the entire Eastern LT City District. By then, we will be even more powerless to face the army of the Bakaton civilization. Therefore, I'm here to call on all the survivors of the 3rd Survivor Base, and it is also an emergency mobilization. We hope that you can join the army and join us in the battle to support the Xingxing Square military base. Let the Bakaton army be defeated by the Xingxing Square military base within 3 days. The lips and teeth are cold. This is a battle for the survival of each of us, a battle for the survival of the Magic City, and a battle for human civilization. We will set up recruitment points on each floor. If you have the strength to fight, we hope you can join us. We can't guarantee that you can come back alive, but what we can guarantee is that if we take the initiative to fight and help them now, we won't have to face the entire Bakaton civilization alone in the future for our civilization, for our relatives and friends who were slaughtered by the Bakaton people, and for ourselves. Fu Kai's voice was deep and powerful, and it echoed throughout the survivor base of the 6th prison through the radio. In the survivor base, those who were lying or sitting stood up one after another. They raised their heads, listened to the voice, listened to the bloody anger and the sonorous words, and people's eyes suddenly lit up. Lin Qun walked through the crowd. He suddenly realized that today he was not passing by the people lying on the ground in a mess. He walked by the people who were standing. What he saw seemed to be that everyone in the survivor base stood up. He returned to his residence like this. Li Xing, Li Ji, Zhao Wen, Kan Yingying were all waiting for him. Li Ji said, "Brother, They were waiting for Lin Qun's answer. What should they do?" Lin Qun smiled and glanced at everyone, and replied softly, "The Bakatons are going to shrink their circle. It seems that we can't hide anymore. No matter how well we develop, we should come out and fight." He turned his head, and looked at the people standing in the prison layer by layer. The lips and teeth are cold. This is a war for everyone. It is a war for the entire Magic City. Everyone has only 2 choices. Wait for death, or draw your sword and fight. This is also his promise to Jiangbin. He will stand up when it is his turn to stand up. Lin Qun lowered his eyes. One day, he will kill Bakayan with his own hands. Moreover, the number of Bakaton armed personnel outside has dropped sharply, and Lin Qun has no Bakatons to hunt. If he is called to join the war, he will undoubtedly be able to harvest a large amount of energy. He is now different from when he first arrived at the survivor base. His strength is also the confidence that he dares to join the battle group. After all, Lin Qun is not the kind of person who gets carried away by blood. The broadcast is still playing in a loop. Outside, many people are rushing forward, encouraged, and ready to fight. However, there are still many people who have not taken action, or are waiting and watching, or simply do not want to participate in such a dangerous action. Lin Qun has made a decision. Li Xing, Li Ji and others have the same attitude as him. These days, they have been hunting bastion people with Lin Qun. They know that in this kind of civilization war, only by killing more can you become stronger and have a higher chance of survival. Hiding is equivalent to putting your chance of survival on others. Lin Qun and others discussed it and finally decided that he, Li Xing, Li Ji, and Xiao Wen would sign up for the call for the time being, while Qin Yingying would stay first. First, Qin Yingying's ability can hardly help, and second, they still have something here. Now there are all kinds of people in the survivor base. If they all go out and turn around, they may be occupied by the cuckoo. And this time, I'm afraid that they will fight with the regular army of bastion. Lin Qun does not dare to be careless and is ready to take the lead. Li Xing can be a nanny. Li Ji's strength has increased fiercely recently and can help Lin Qun deal with some situations that he cannot deal with, and Xiao Wen can provide vision. This combination is Lin Qun's most ideal lineup now. Lin Qun said, this time it may be more dangerous than before. After all, it is a head-on confrontation with the regular army of bastion. If you want to withdraw, it is still not too late, and I will not stop you. Li Ji and others looked at each other, and none of them had any intention of withdrawing. Xiao Wen smiled and said, I will go too. My ability can be of great help when necessary, right? However, I hope you will consider what I told you last time. What Xiao Wen said was naturally sitting on Lin Qun and shaking. Lin Qun pretended not to hear, waved his hand, and said, okay, then we will set off now. When we come back this time, I will treat you to beef. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were attracted, and even Xiao Wen showed an obvious expression of interest. Brother, did I hear you right? Li Ji's eyes widened. Beef. You can get beef at this time. Of course, wait, we'll go together and come back together. As for where I got the beef, you'll know when the time comes. Hearing Lin Qun's words, several people's eyes lit up. If someone else said this, they would definitely not believe it. At this time, it was not certain whether the division commander could eat beef. But along the way, they had seen Lin Qun's strength and were somewhat certain. Lin Qun just smiled and said nothing more. He knew that this time, only his combat power could absolutely match the front battlefield. Li Ji and the others would be in great danger if they followed him, and the majority of the contribution points would definitely go into Lin Qun's account. In this case, they were willing to follow him, and Lin Qun would not be stingy to not share a little beef. There will definitely be more and better supply cards in the future. Lin Qun took the lead and they went straight to the recruitment point on their floor, mentioned in the broadcast. At the recruitment point, the military soldiers and the managers of the survivors on this floor set up several tables and were registering the applicants. There were already a large crowd of people in front of them. Lin Qun and his companions once again felt the feeling of being squeezed into the subway, which they had not felt for a long time, and were caught in the crowd. It seems that the situation is urgent. It seems that they will be assigned after registration. Lin Qun noticed that except for a small number of survivors who were ejected due to their poor strength, the rest were immediately taken away by the military soldiers and directly assigned to the squads. A man in front of him turned his head and said, of course, the battle in front is a race against time. The survivors recruited by the military will be pulled out to fight immediately after registering here and being divided into squads downstairs. You see those people standing in front of the soldiers, they are all squad leaders selected from the survivors. They are all powerful survivors who chose to join the military before. We all have to merge into these survivor squads and then follow a military unit. In this way, a team is formed, and we can go out to perform tasks. However, I heard that we will not go to Xing Square to fight. At most, we will make trouble behind the bastion army. The risk factor is not that high. Yes, we are not a regular army, just a bunch of rabble. If we really go to the front battlefield, won't we cause trouble for the military? Lin Qun replied, and found that it was true. Those team leaders were also selecting people. This is a two-way selection process. Most of the survivors who responded to the call were full of enthusiasm and wanted to join a strong team, and those team leaders also hoped to choose strong companions. Some of the top 30 were even more sought after. Lin Qun took a look and found that none of them had a physical fitness of more than 52. Happy Kixie Festival to all readers, and then ask for all kinds of support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62. Is there someone above me? The crowd surged forward. Lin Qun and his friends finally squeezed to the front and lined up for registration. The person in charge of registration rolled his eyes and took out a stack of forms. Fill it out first. Fill it out according to your strength. You can also express your intention to go to any team. However, whether you can be arranged depends on the allocation. When he said the word allocation, he emphasized it a little. His eyes flickered, and the implication was that he wanted to get some benefits so that he would be allocated to the team that Lin Qun and his friends wanted to go to. Lin Qun didn't mean to be polite. He was going to fill in the ranking by hand and go to the strongest team. But before he took the form, he suddenly heard a voice with a little excitement. Is it you? Lin Qun was stunned. Does he have any acquaintances here? Turning his head, he found that it was none other than Wang Han, the little star that Lin Qun and his friends had met before. He was wearing volunteer clothes, smiled, and said, "See you again. What a coincidence." Wang Han was still the same, but he looked more energetic than before outside, and the two bodyguards were nowhere to be seen. He glanced at Lin Qun and said, "You guys also want to join the battle? I knew that with your strength, you would not sit still and wait for death. I know people who can arrange you to join a strong team, and there is no need for so many formalities." Squad leader KO, this is the master I have been telling you and Captain Chu about. Lin Qun only noticed at this time that there was a dignified soldier standing behind Wang Han. The other party was also moving his eyes over, looking Lin Qun up and down, and said, "Hello, I heard about you from Wang Han. You are a master. I'm Ko Zin, the squad leader of the guard squad of the 2nd Regiment of the 465th Division. I'm glad to meet you." After he finished speaking, the people around him were slightly agitated. It would have been fine if he didn't reveal his identity. Once he did, he turned out to be the squad leader of the guard squad of a regiment commander. People looked at him in a different way immediately. In front of Lin Qun, the person in charge of registration had a flash of light in his eyes and quietly retracted all the forms in his hand. He was not that bold. He just wanted to make some extra money by taking advantage of his position. He never thought that Lin Qun and his men were actually related to a regiment commander, so how could he dare to say anything? Now in the survivor base, the military has a very high status, and a regiment commander is a top figure for them. In fact, Lin Qun was also surprised. He didn't expect that Wang Han really knew a high-level person, a regiment commander directly. And at this time, there is no need to hide this relationship. Moreover, Ko Zin seemed to trust Wang Han's words very much, and he also wanted to make decisions in an emergency, so he said directly, "Since you are a master, you and your people can be exempted from cumbersome procedures. What is your ranking? Top 100? Top 50? Or top 30? Ko Zin didn't ask about the top 10. He felt that, even if Wang Han knew a master, it was impossible for him to know the top 10. Lin Qun was not a person who exaggerates, so he just smiled and said, "The top 30. Upon hearing this, Ko Zin looked at Lin Qun deeply and said, "There are at least 2 million survivors in Dongcheng district now. The top 30 are elites. Wang Han, you have found a master hidden in the city for our Captain Chu. If you are willing, I can arrange a strong team for you, with the top 10 in the East District, and 3 of them are in the top 30 alone, to cooperate with our newly formed elite platoon." Kaozin didn't waste any words and said straight to the point, of course, such a team has the opportunity to come into contact with a large number of Bakatons, but it is also very dangerous. You can refuse me and follow the normal procedures for arrangement. Squad leader KO, that's troublesome. Lin Qun glanced at Wang Han, did not refuse, and joked, the ham sausage you asked for, I will give you a batch later. The opportunity given by Kaozin was exactly what Lin Qun wanted. More Bakatons, more opportunities. Now he has the strength to cooperate with the military in combat. Wang Han was a little surprised and waved his hand quickly. I dare not take this. It seems that he helped Lin Qun and gave Lin Qun connections, but Wang Han knew clearly that with Lin Qun's ability, he could get such treatment. If he went through the formalities, it would just waste some time. Lin Qun did not need the connections he brought. Lin Qun just smiled, as if he saw what Wang Han meant, and said nothing more. Okay, come with me. Kaozin looked at Lin Qun with some appreciation, and was obviously satisfied with Lin Qun's quick agreement. He did not question or want to check Lin Qun's combat power. Of course, there was the reason of emergency, and another layer was because he was going to the battlefield. If he lied about his strength, he would die. No one would be so stupid. As for whether lying would cause trouble for the military, on the battlefield, the survivors all cooperated with the military to fight. One more or one less would not make any difference. And when Lin Qun joined, his people could naturally join with him. Afterwards, Kaozin personally led Lin Qun and others all the way down to the outside of the prison and joined a mixed force of military and survivors. The survivors along the way were envious of the background of Lin Qun and others. Lin Qun looked a little strange. When did he, an ordinary citizen all his life, become someone with connections? When Lin Qun came over and saw that there were many acquaintances here, the person in charge of the military was none other than Zhao Yi, whom he had met once before, and on the survivors' side, Liuyi and Ni Wensheng were also among them. There were more than a dozen survivors, and each of them was very capable. Li Ji whispered, Brother Lin, have we been taken to the team of the big boss that the guy just mentioned? Kaozin personally brought people over, said a few words to Zhao Yi, and then left with Wang Han. Zhao Yi came over, shook hands with Lin Qun, and said, I looked at the information of the four of you. I heard from Liu Ko that you are in the top 30. Your level is not low, right? Lin Qun nodded. I can fight against many Bakatons. Lin Qun also wanted to join a strong team. First, there were Bakatons to kill, and second, he also wanted to contribute his own strength. He could hide when he was developing before, but now, it was time to take action. As for the weak teams, they might only perform reconnaissance missions or material collection missions. They might not even earn a single contribution point that day, which was a waste of time. Zhao Yi said, is your ability strength? Lin Qun nodded. He had too many skills, and it was too troublesome to explain them, so he just reported one at random. He just wanted to get on the battlefield as soon as possible. Okay, but you also have to pay attention. The battlefield is not a place to display your personal heroism. Those you usually kill are Bakaton armed civilians. It is different from the real battlefield, especially for someone with a strength talent like you. There are not many opportunities for hand-to-hand combat on the battlefield. Be careful not to be killed by stray bullets. Your companions are quite capable, but their levels are too low. You are not my best choice. If squad leader KO hadn't sent you here personally, it would have been too late. I would rather select the members of the team myself, so that we can better match them. Zhao Yi said, but I still have to remind you that our team is very strong, and we are definitely carrying out dangerous tasks, confronting the Bakatons head on. The current task is to intercept a Bakaton armored unit. The death rate will be very high. Of course, there will be more opportunities to gain contribution points, so think about it. We will set off in 5 minutes. It will be too late for you to quit after we set off. Lin Qun wanted this opportunity to gain more contribution points, so it was naturally impossible for him to quit. He understood that Zhao Yi's words were not pleasant to hear, but they were a manifestation of responsibility. Then they boarded a military vehicle converted from a civilian bus on the side according to Zhao Yi's distribution. There were a total of 18 survivors in their team, all on the bus. Chapter 63 Heading to the front. It was very quiet in the car. Almost no one was talking. Liui and Ni Wensheng's people were sitting on each side. Liui only glanced at Lin Qun and his people and looked away. Ni Wensheng was talking about it, as if he regarded Lin Qun and his people as relatives, and was afraid that they would be held back. Lin Qun's combat power has been improved. In this round of battle, he will not deliberately show it or hide it. Whether he is a relative or not, it will be clear when he goes to the battlefield. Their convoy moved quickly, from the courtyard inside the prison to the outside, but did not move forward, but stopped here for a short time. Li Xing and others whispered, some nervous, and some excited. Lin Qun said, you just need to assist me, and follow behind me. If there are any back-attempts who slip through the net, I will leave it to you. Remember, don't take risks. Li Xing and others nodded. Lin Qun sat by the window, his eyes moving, and he was always observing the outside. In the survivors' base, teams of people set out immediately after assembling. It can be seen that the situation is urgent, and the number of military personnel is obviously small. In some teams, there are even half and half military soldiers and survivors. The survivors who were mobilized had no time to receive training or training. At most, they were given some weapons and bulletproof vests, and then they were urgently pulled out to participate in the war. Fu Kai mobilized the survivors, which was also a helpless move. Compared with the combat personnel of the Bakatan people, the number of military personnel was too small. If the survivors were not allowed to participate in the war, the military would not be able to support it at all. The convoy did not start immediately. Xiao Yi was busy integrating the team and supplies in the back. Xiao Yi's previous platoon had already fought almost to death, and there were not many people left. Although Kaozan said beautifully that this platoon was an elite platoon, it was actually put together temporarily. Xiao Yi led the infantry and an armored unit to form a new combat unit, and the survivors were also part of it to fill the manpower and combat power. Xiao Yi and an officer of another armored unit were both responsible for the entire platoon. Liui was serious. Seeing that the convoy had not started, he took the initiative to speak and introduce the situation to the people around him, saying, don't worry, although we are following the military, we are mainly cooperating. We may have some strength, but on the battlefield, we are just an inconspicuous soldier. We have not received military training, and our combat effectiveness is far inferior to that of the military soldiers. Someone behind him complimented, Brother Liu, you are already in the top 10 strong men, and you are still so humble? On the battlefield, you can't beat 3 people. Everyone nodded. Although Ni Wensheng and others ignored Lin Qun and others, they also respected Liui, who had strength. The gap between the top 10 is also very large, and some people who are not in the top 10 may also be very powerful. There are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers among us humans. I have seen a person sink a Bakatan light attack ship by himself, which is something I can't do now. Liui's words caused a lot of discussion. Ni Wensheng couldn't help but widen his eyes. Really? There is such a master? Who is he? Kiza Chun? Xia King? No, he is a mysterious person. I don't know who he is. I only know that he should also be in our survivor base. Liui shook his head, and a trace of yearning and admiration appeared in his eyes. Who doesn't want to be a strong man? The scene he saw that day was deeply engraved in his heart. Although he didn't know who that person was, he became the target he wanted to pursue. Everyone was also very excited and curious after hearing this. They looked at each other, as if the mysterious master was right beside them. But what they didn't know was that the person they were discussing was sitting in the corner at this time, with a strange expression. Lin Qun naturally knew who Liui was talking about. It's just that Lin Qun turned his eyes away. He had no intention of exposing himself. It would be too stupid to jump out and say that XXX was me. This time Lin Qun was ready to go all out. It must not take long before these people don't have to guess randomly. Of course, there is no need to deliberately show off, to raise a big banner and say that I'm a master or something. Lin Qun knew his purpose. Help the military to participate in the war and harvest as many contribution points as possible. Apart from that, there is no need to do anything else. At this time, Xiao Yi in front seemed to have finally made arrangements. He conveyed instructions one by one and simply carried out pre-war mobilization and training, reminding the convoy to start. Xiao Yi emphasized in particular, "I remind you again that you are cooperating with us in the battle. Don't run around on the battlefield. Don't think that you can fight against the entire Bakatan army alone. Obey orders, otherwise, you will only pay the price of your life in vain." Not long after, their convoy started again with a roar and drove out from the main gate of the survivors of the 6th prison and drove deep into the chaotic city of the Magic City. Behind them, the soldiers stationed at the entrances and exits all saluted. The convoy swayed and moved forward for a distance, and there was silence. After a while, Liui in front reminded, "Be careful, we are about to enter the war zone." At this moment, they were far away from the survivor base and drove nearly 4 kilometers. In the past 2 days, the number of Bakatans active around the survivor base of the 6th prison in the Magic City has dropped sharply. They just came all the way here, fast and stable, without encountering any Bakatans, and reached the edge of the war zone. Go to the front line. Before setting off, Xiao Yi had announced the content of the mission to everyone. They had to cooperate with the main force of the Core Armored Regiment to blow up an ammunition transfer station of the Bakatans in the East City District. It used to be a large warehouse. It was occupied by the Bakatans. After landing in advance, it was later transformed into a transfer station for the Bakatans to transport weapons and equipment from the Central City District to the East City District. There are a lot of arms stored in it, which is exactly the goal of their operation this time. Xiao Yi's troops are responsible for blocking the Bakatans in one direction. This is the same as what the big brother that Lin Qun and his teammate said. The team with survivors participating in the harassment work is mostly harassment work and will not really participate in the battlefield of the emerging survivor base. Lin Qun and his team are considered the top survivor team in the survivor base. There are masters such as Liui and Ni Wensheng, but they are also carrying out harassment tasks, which can be seen. The route had been planned. Under the guidance of the reconnaissance drone, they avoided the small Bakatan troops along the way, went 5.6 kilometers deep into the East City District, hid the vehicles in the alleys, and deployed anti-reconnaissance jamming equipment. Prepare to ambush a Bakatan army that is supporting the transfer station warehouse from the Central City District. Tanks and armored vehicles carrying heavy weapons have been ambushed, and Xiao Yi led the infantry soldiers and the survivors to ambush on both sides of the street. He led some soldiers and Liui and 7 or 8 other survivors on one side, while the deputy platoon leader led Lin Qun, Ni Wensheng and others to ambush on the other side. Everyone had already been distributed weapons and protective gear. Everyone instinctively became nervous. The deputy platoon leader kept reminding them in a low voice, "Don't make any noise, don't fire in advance. These are not the Bakatan miscellaneous infantry or Bakatan armed civilians you encountered before. They are the Bakatan armored forces, the real Bakatan army. Obey the command of the superiors, follow orders." Before he finished speaking, a flash of fire appeared, and a Bakatan missile flew from the end of the street and hit his position instantly, blowing the deputy platoon leader and the 2 soldiers beside him into bloody flesh. The Bakatan armored forces are coming. Chapter 64, Telekinetic Brain Car. The attack came from a street away, nearly 500 meters away in a straight line. The shell passed through the building opposite and hit the human hiding in the building. The battle started in an instant. The military's concealment and ambush seemed to be discovered by the Bakatans, but at this time, no one had time to think about what was going on. The military's chariots ambushed in the shadows fired synchronously. Liui took over the position of deputy squad leader and moved quickly with the soldiers. Lin Qun and his men followed closely behind, passing through the hail of bullets. The troops on both sides exchanged fire across 2 streets. In the first round of confrontation, they could hardly see the true appearance of the so-called Bakatan armored forces. There were only loud noises on the streets, and residential buildings groaned and collapsed under the destruction of shells. The Bakatan chariots were emerging from the chariots. The technological level of the Bakatans is not much different from that of humans. Their biological and physiological structures are also similar to those of humans, so their chariots are also very similar to those of humans, but they are taller, at least 5 meters high, covered with heavy thick armor, with large caliber double-barreled turrets mounted on them, and machine gun muzzles on both sides, madly firing at human tank armored forces. Wherever they run over, the ruins of collapsed buildings and a large number of scrapped cars on the ground are all crushed under their feet. No matter what kind of obstacles, they seem to be able to crush them with ease. Conventional high explosive bombs cannot break through their outer defenses. Only armor-piercing bombs can make a hole in these big guys. On the battlefield of the frontal exchange of fire, shells are flying, and smoke is rolling. This is a contest of steel monsters. In front of them, no matter whether you are ranked 5th, 50, or 500th, as long as you can't withstand a shell with a caliber of more than 120mm or a rocket flying everywhere, you are not qualified to stand in front of them. And even Lin Qun, who has a physical fitness of 26 points, can't do this. Liui and his men advanced at high speed on the edge of the front battlefield, but many people were still killed by large caliber machine gun bullets, or simply by some artillery shells. A living person was smashed directly in front of you, and blood, flesh, and mud splashed everywhere. If you were to move forward quickly, you might be the one who died inexplicably. Lin Qun shuttled through such a battlefield, and felt a shudder of fear. But he understood that this was the real battlefield. This was the real Bastion army. What he had come into contact with before were either the stragglers of the Bastion regular army or the Bastion armed personnel who were similar to the survivors. The two sides were actually not much different, so they could fight back and forth, because they had never really come into contact with the main force of the Bastions. This is also one of the reasons why Lin Qun had not joined the military before. He was not strong enough. When he came to such a place, his life and death were not under his control. If you have strength, it is called cooperation with the military, and you and the military help each other. If you don't have strength, you are cannon fodder. At this time, they had moved half a street forward from their previous position, and had already lost nearly 20% of their manpower. On the other side, the armored forces of the two sides had collided. That was another battlefield, where steel and cannons clashed, and the brutal force was crushing the city and the streets. On the infantry battlefield nearby, they quickly broke out under the hail of heavy artillery, first breaking out under the cover of the armored forces, and then cooperating with the rear armored forces, to surround the entire Bastion force and lock their retreat route. The survivors and soldiers all took action, showing their magical powers. Fighting in the street melee, various abilities and shells were fired everywhere, centripetal impact, and fierce fighting. The encirclement has been formed. If they can quickly clear out the Bastion infantry and light armored forces, they can cooperate with their own armored forces to quickly eat up this Bastion armed force. From their position, they couldn't see where Xiaoyi's team was. Only orders were flying in the communication channel to maintain the rhythm of the war and everyone's position. Lin Qun huddled behind the bunker, only showing a pair of eyes. While others were fighting the Bastions, there was almost no sound here. Because he didn't need to make any sound when firing, whoever he glared at would die. He shot the Bastions 20 to 30 meters away in the head one after another. After upgrading, the headshot female skill became more useful. Behind a vehicle bunker, there was a Bastion heavy firepower point with 4 Bastions. A group of soldiers fired at them for a long time, but failed to take them down. They were forced to hide under the suppression of firepower, but they found that the Bastion's firepower point suddenly stopped making any sound. When he looked up, he saw that all the Bastions at that firepower point were dead. They were neatly lined up, without heads, lying in a row. Everyone was shocked. Whose shooting is so accurate? This is certainly not shooting, but Lin Qun's eyes. In the chaos, his eyes locked, which is more accurate than the sharpshooter. In addition, the Bastions were attracted by the fierce firepower of the warriors and survivors such as Liui. Lin Qun hid in this corner, and no Bastions cared about him at all. He could snipe at will. In this chaotic battle, there were also Bastions who discovered him. A row of bullets swept over. Lin Qun dodged, and then raised his head, and the opponent was dead. Can the speed of shooting be faster than my glaring at you? Lin Qun said, this time I'm not afraid of anyone in a gunfight. Lin Qun was very excited. Although this battlefield was dangerous, there were quite a lot of Bakatons. The two sides were fighting, and so many people were rushing to kill, that he was a little overwhelmed. The contribution points rose, and in the blink of an eye, there were already 8. After the Bakatons around the survivor base began to decrease significantly, this was the best way for Lin Qun to level up. The passive concentration technique continued to bless him, and his energy was also recovering rapidly in the battle. Lin Qun also wanted to try to explode missiles and rockets with his naked eyes. He couldn't see the small bullets clearly, but there was still hope. However, he found that it was not so easy to replicate the success of the last time. He had to see the target object clearly before he could detonate it, but the speed was too fast. He was a human, and his dynamic vision was not that exaggerated. He could only try to activate the skills, and occasionally succeeded once or twice. On this battlefield, the flying shells gave Lin Qun the opportunity to try, but he didn't dare to try too much. After all, it consumed energy. More energy was saved for sweeping contribution points. However, Lin Qun's old 13 skills did not attract attention on this battlefield. No one paid attention to who killed those Bakatons, and how they died. Although Lin Qun was killing crazily in the corner, to others, Lin Qun's presence was very low. On the contrary, Li Ji is very eye-catching, because his skills are full of sound and light effects. He has also upgraded in recent days. The upper limit of dark energy has reached 7 points. With his weapons, the range and power have increased greatly. Hiding behind the bunker, he shot out a terrifying arc of electricity, which directly blew up the Bakatons behind the opposite bunker. The current ran wild, making Liui look at him more. Liui is also very fierce. His ability is very strange. He can virtualize various weapons in the simulation, such as knives, bows and arrows, and the arrows shot are also a light arrow with great power. Of course, the real main force on the battlefield is the powerful firepower of the soldiers on both sides. At this time, they are suppressing the Bakatons in front and attacking a Bakaton firepower point. Ni Wensheng took the lead and killed the front line to suppress it. Liui followed closely. If they can quickly annihilate the Bakaton infantry, they can use anti-tank weapons to quickly eat up this wave of Bakaton armored forces. But just as they rushed out, a row of machine gun bullets came and shot at the front few people, who were shot into civs on the spot. Ni Wensheng reacted quickly enough to roll out. Then, there was a dense attack from a distance, instantly knocking Liui and others back. At the corner of the street in front, 2 Bakaton light tanks were guarding a peculiar curved tank and slowly drove out. The dense machine guns were crazy and suppressed, and everyone on this side was running for their heads, unable to raise their heads. Under the powerful firepower of the machine gun with a caliber of more than 30mm, conventional bunkers were useless. The car body and walls were all smashed. They could only evade deep into the building. Half of the people on their side died at once. Li Xing was even more frightened, because if Lin Qun hadn't pulled him and asked him to take 2 steps forward quickly, he might have been shot to death. However, they had already hidden in the building, and the Bakatons' attacks were still following them, but it was not a direct random shooting, but a targeted shooting, as if they knew where the humans were hiding in the building. Liui's face changed. Damn it, it's the Bakaton telekinetic brain car. No wonder we have anti-reconnaissance equipment, but they discovered it in advance. We must kill it, otherwise we will all die here today. Chapter 65 Give me vision. Bakaton telekinetic brain car. Lin Qun was also surprised when he heard it. He had heard of this thing in the survivor base. It was a special telekinetic weapon of Bakaton. Telekinetic masters are a unique group of creatures in the Bakaton civilization. The strong ones can crush one side like gods, such as Bakayan and Bakali. However, in the Bakaton civilization, not everyone with the talent of telekinetic masters can reach this level. Some of them may practice for a lifetime and even have difficulty moving objects with telekinesis. These low-end telekinetic masters are usually arranged in groups of 4 to enter this kind of telekinetic brain car. With the help of an amplification device, the 4 people are connected and have living reconnaissance and certain telekinetic control capabilities. And this kind of living reconnaissance can directly locate life, regardless of whether it is hiding or not. Conventional concealment and anti-reconnaissance methods are all ineffective. Moreover, the Bakatan telekinetic brain car is technologically advanced and can also avoid the prying of reconnaissance aircraft. Lin Qun had only heard of this combat unit before, and this was the first time he saw it. It seems that because of this group of Bakatans discovered Xiao Yi's troops who were hiding in ambush and attacked in advance, turning the ambush attack into a frontal battle. When it appears, hiding loses any meaning. You think you are hiding in secret, but in fact your whereabouts are completely mastered. Under its guidance, 2 Bakatan light infantry fighting vehicles are firing crazily, killing humans hiding around. The battle has evolved into a massacre. At this moment, the battlefield has been cut off, and the military armored forces behind are exchanging fire with the armored forces of Bakatan. Here, they must face this group of Bakatan forces alone. Liui gritted his teeth and said, "There is no hiding. Let's rush out. Either we kill them, or they kill us all." As he said, he took the lead and rushed directly outside with the rest. They still have manpower and a chance to fight. When they are all dead, there will be no chance. Lin Qun did not move, but grabbed Xiao Wen and said, "Give me vision. How can flesh and blood compete with steel monsters?" If they rushed out like this, let alone whether they could take down the telekinetic brain car, even if they could, there would be countless casualties. The only way is to take down the brain car first. Lin Qun wanted to kill the 4 telekinetic masters directly from the inside. Li Ji took a deep breath. "Brother, I will go out with them and cover you." Liui led his men to kill all the way out. The survivors and soldiers hiding in other corners received the signal and rushed out one after another, forcing the attack of the Bakatans. However, with a telekinetic brain car, 2 Bakatan light tanks, and at least 4 heavy machine guns in front, they could not get close at all and were killed in groups. Liui shot out a separate light arrow and shot through one of the light tanks, but this was still not enough to stop it. Instead, Liui became the focus of the attack. The Bakatans turned the muzzle and bombarded him. Liui had no choice but to escape. If he was not at a high enough level, he would have been killed instantly. But this created an opportunity for Lin Qun. In the messy bunker, Lin Qun has already held Xiao Wen's hand. Xiao Wen's eyes rolled back, looking a little scary. The ability of shared vision is activated. The telekinetic brain car is moving, and the speed is not that fast. Xiao Wen can peek at the scene inside. This is not the first time the two have worked together. After arriving at the survivors' base, Lin Qun has cooperated with Xiao Wen many times to go out and hunt the Bakatans, and they are already familiar with it. The blurred vision appears, which is the scene inside the Bakatan arc-shaped telekinetic brain car. Full on Bakatan telekineticists are sitting in the center of the brain car, wearing strange equipment on their heads, connected to the giant machine in the car. That seems to be their amplification device. Unfortunately, this head-mounted equipment cannot cover their entire heads. Xiao Wen's vision moved quickly, and Lin Qun saw one headshot after another. The 4 Bakatan telekineticists instantly became headless corpses. The 2 telekinetic brain car drivers in front were shocked when they heard the sound behind them and turned their heads to check. Before they could be terrified, they lost their lives in the next second. On the battlefield, the brain car lost control instantly and crashed into a light infantry fighting vehicle on the side. The 2 vehicles exploded with a loud bang, and a huge flame rose in the middle of the street. Liui, Ni Wensheng and others were all shocked. They didn't know what was going on. They hadn't done anything yet, so how could the Bakatan people collapse? Ni Wensheng instinctively asked, "Did you do it?" Liui blurted out, "How is it possible?" Only Li Ji and Li Xing understood what was going on. Lin Qun succeeded. They looked at each other, all showing excitement, and rushed forward to attack the last Bakatan light infantry fighting vehicle. Li Ji took the lead, activated his lightning strike ability, and directly blew a hole in the opponent's light armor, and took down the infantry fighting vehicle. The Bakatan people inside were all slaughtered. Liui ran past the exploding telekinetic brain car, still with a look of astonishment on his face. He didn't know what happened. How could a good telekinetic brain car hit itself? They didn't do anything. Could it be that the Bakatans inside suddenly went crazy? Are they pacifists? But how is this possible? But at this time, Liui had no time to think. The battlefield was changing rapidly. He led his men to continue forward. On the other side, Zhao Yi also led his men to deal with the Bakatan infantry. The two sides joined together to complete the final clearing and encirclement. In cooperation with the human armored forces, they surrounded and strangled the entire Bakatan armored forces. The battlefield finally quieted down. The sky was dim, but there were flames everywhere on the ground. The destroyed human tanks and the wreckage of the Bakatan armored forces were billowing with thick smoke. There was almost no need to collect the bodies on the ground. Few of them were intact. The weapons of the Bakatans still carried self-destruct devices. If they were picked up by non-Bakatans, they would explode. There was no need to clean up the battlefield. Everyone gathered again, left the crossfire area, and went to a hidden location to rest temporarily. Zhao Yi needed to contact his superiors, report the battle situation, and wait for the next instructions. The bus that Lin Qun and his team had taken before was blown up by a stray bullet. At this time, they basically sat on the ground to rest. The wounded wailed in despair, but some were very excited. Many of the survivors were discussing how many contribution points they had earned this time. Li Ji had achieved great results this time, earning 7 contribution points, which kept him in an excited state. Lin Qun glanced at Zhao Wen, whose face was a little pale, and after thinking for a while, he handed her a bottle of energy recovery potion. Zhao Wen was not polite, and took it, and drank it down, and her face also improved a little. Lin Qun was also counting his own results. In this battle, he won by a net of 16 contribution points, but he killed more than 20 Bakatans. His experience was maximumed out directly, reaching level 9. Name, Lin Qun level 9, 750 over 11,000, strength 18 agility, 16 physique, 27 energy, 8 over 30, talent, card draw bonus ability. Lin Qun's attributes are becoming more and more terrifying. With his current physique, ordinary pistol bullets may not be able to cause him any substantial damage. With the ability of the headshot girl, opponents with less than 54 points of physical fitness can be killed at will. Even among the Bakatans, few can reach 20 points of physical fitness. Not only that, Lin Qun's energy has reached 30, which is 3 times the human standard. For ordinary people, their attributes increase by 1 point every time they level up, but as a traverser, Lin Qun's energy increases by 2 points every time, plus the attribute card bonus. It becomes more and more terrifying. As for these 16 contribution points, Lin Qun is ready to draw another card. The battlefield changes rapidly, so keep 6 points for the time being. But before he could act, Ni Wensheng suddenly came over. Chapter 66, America. Lin Qun stopped what he was doing and looked up at Ni Wensheng. Ni Wensheng was tall, more than 2.6 meters tall, and his ability seemed to be some kind of giant ability. Every time he upgraded, all his attributes could be improved. Standing in front of Lin Qun and the others, he was like a shadow. He was not looking for Lin Qun, but for Li Ji. He looked at Li Ji with a gleam in his eyes. Your name is Li Ji, right? I just noticed you. You are very capable and powerful. I take back what I said before. Kaozin brought you here, and you are qualified to join us. Hearing what Ni Wensheng said, Li Ji was stunned for a moment, and blinked his eyes. Oh, this? You are also very powerful. I saw it. If you hadn't helped Liuiui, he might have died. Although Liuiui's level, ability, and ranking were higher than Ni Wensheng, his attributes were not as good as Ni Wensheng. On the battlefield, Ni Wensheng could only use a gun for long distance combat, but he could save people from the muzzle of the Bakatan people's gunfire with his super high attributes. Ni Wensheng just smiled at this, and glanced at Lin Qun and others behind Li Ji, and said, I respect the strong. Li Ji, you are powerful, I recognize your strength, but these companions of yours are just burdens. If you want, you can come with me, and you don't have to bring them with you anymore. You can see that this battlefield is completely different from the area near our survivor base. Here, bringing burdens can only make you and your burdens die faster. After hearing this, Lin Qun and others reacted. Ni Wensheng was throwing an olive branch to Li Ji, and he didn't forget to mock Lin Qun and others. Obviously, in Ni Wensheng's view, Lin Qun and others were able to get in because of the relationship between Li Ji, a master, Li Ji's expression was a little strange, and he stole a glance at Lin Qun, thinking, the person who killed the bastion telekinetic brain car in one breath has become a burden to you. Then what are you? But he didn't say this, just politely declined. Ni Wensheng was a little disappointed, but he didn't say anything. He just looked at Lin Qun and others and said, I didn't see you this time. I didn't know where you were hiding. But there is no need for cowards on the battlefield. That will kill you and others. If I were you, I would leave by myself. When the telekinetic brain car was finally captured, Lin Qun didn't show up at all. It was obvious that he was considered a coward and hid. Ni Wensheng was very disdainful of Lin Qun and others. Lin Qun understood why this guy looked up to Li Ji and looked down on them. Lin Qun was not annoyed, but felt inexplicably funny and said, thank you for your concern. I will pay attention next time and try to hide where you can see me. Ni Wensheng frowned when he heard this, thinking that Lin Qun was arguing with him, but he looked down on Lin Qun and didn't want to talk nonsense with Lin Qun. He only said to Li Ji at the end, if you change your mind, you can come to me at any time, and left. This was just a small episode. Lin Qun shook his head and looked ahead. Xiao Yi was discussing something with Liui and the head of the armored force. Then he retracted his gaze and prepared to start drawing cards. It's time to spend 10 contribution points to witness your character. A card slowly emerged in front of Lin Qun. The things on it made Lin Qun overjoyed. On the other side, Xiao Yi and his team received the latest instructions to assemble at another location. At this time, Liui hesitated and told him about the bastion telekinetic brain car. Xiao Yi was also surprised when he heard it. You are right. It's impossible for the bastion people to go crazy. Someone must have done something, and that person should be among us. Liui frowned, but even I can't do this. I don't even know how the bastion telekinetic brain car went out of control. For our entire third survivor base, at most Xiao King can do it. No, that may not be the case. For some reason, Xiao Yi instinctively thought of the mysterious strong man who had shot down a bastion light attack ship. Liui seemed to have some associations, and was surprised. He said, you mean, I saw many corpses of bastions on the battlefield. Their deaths were very strange, and they all had no heads. Later, I heard that the man who sank the bastion attack ship alone killed the bastions by some kind of headshot. Liui also felt that it was very likely. He couldn't help but say, should we find a way to find him? No need. Whether he tells us who he is or not actually has little impact on the current situation. His help to our team in secret or in public is the same. Moreover, I'm just guessing, but I believe, if he is in our team, he will appear sooner or later. Xiao Yi turned his head and his eyes swept through the survivors and soldiers behind him one by one, pausing for a moment on Li Xing. When Li Xing didn't speak, he still looked very calm and stylish. Otherwise the survivors in the survivor base in Longcheng community would not have mistaken him for a big boss. As for Lin Qun, Xiao Yi didn't even look at him and quickly swept past him. Because Lin Qun was sitting on the ground at this time, with a silly smile on his face, no different from those survivors, who were extremely excited after getting a few contribution points. He didn't look like a big boss at all, and he didn't match the mysterious strong man in Xiao Yi's mind who destroyed the bastion attack ship with thunderous means, and then left gracefully. Lin Qun really didn't have the demeanor of a strong man, and he really looked silly at this time. Because he drew an important treasure that he urgently needed. On that card, there was a figure with a blue tights, a handsome face, a perfect figure and a beautiful butt. This is an item card from the American comic world. Name, Vibranium Shield. Type, item card grade, D level. Description, this is a prototype disc-shaped shield with a diameter of 0.76 meters and a weight of 5.4 kilograms. It is made of vibranium, iron and some chemicals. It has a smooth surface and perfect aerodynamic characteristics. It can move in the air with minimal wind resistance and ensure that the throwing route will not deviate. It has super toughness and can absorb kinetic energy, resist extreme pressure, extreme temperature, radiation and electromagnetic spectrum attacks, etc. Note, why don't we use it to play an interesting frisbee game before it is smashed by the purple potato spirit? Is it materialized? This thing comes from the Marvel world. It is Captain America's shield. Moreover, it is a D-level item. This is the first time that Lin Qun has drawn a D-level item. After drawing so many junk items, this time a miracle finally happened. What excites Lin Qun the most is that this shield has extremely amazing defense and can directly withstand missile attacks. With it, Lin Qun can even rush to their faces and blow up their heads under the artillery fire of the Bastions. It's extremely brutal. This time, he has a combination of a vibranium spear and a shield. Spear and shield. Lin Qun thought to himself, why am I feeling more and more like a primitive warrior? Chapter 67. He withstood a missile. The sky was completely dark. The silver moon was covered by clouds, and the sky and the ground were crimson. Xiao Yi's team set out again without resting for too long. Their mission this time was to move closer to the survivor base in Xingxing Square. Their previous mission was successful. They dispatched many forces to intercept the reinforcement of Bastion, allowing the military to successfully capture the transit station of Bastion people, but the situation did not become clear. Compared with the overall situation, the small loss suffered by the Bastion people did not change the rhythm of the war, because the situation has changed again. That is a change visible to the naked eye. Lin Qun, who has completely turned into an infantry, followed closely behind a tank. He looked up and saw that in the distance, 2 more Bastion sailing ships joined the battle group. Facing the reinforcement and harassment of the other 2 survivors in the DC area, they directly chose to invest more troops. And here, you can feel the vibration and loud noise coming from the direction of the survivor base in Xingxing Square. In fact, it was not just them. At this moment, the survivors from the 6th prison survivor base and the military mixed team were all moving towards that side. The main reinforcement from the 2 brother survivor bases in the DC area had arrived at the Xingxing survivor base long before Lin Qun and his team. They were the real reinforcement sent by both sides. In the final analysis, the military and the survivors mixed team was a helpless move. The military could not guarantee the combat effectiveness and discipline of these teams. Ni Wensheng said, the Xingxing Square survivor base has been surrounded, and the battle was fierce, so we have to go there too. Of course, he did not tell this news kindly to Lin Qun and other burdens whom he looked down on, but to Li Ji. In fact, he came over and said something, but he did not even look at Lin Qun, the weak chicken. However, Lin Qun observed that Ni Wensheng was actually a simple man. He really looked down on the weak, but respected the strong from the bottom of his heart, such as Li Ji. He and Li Ji were not familiar with each other, and Li Ji had just rejected him mercilessly, but this guy did not have the slightest air of being in the top 20. He came over to talk to him, but the journey was not smooth. A city area in the Magic City was too big, almost equivalent to a small or medium-sized city. They had more than 10 kilometers to go from the new survivor base in front of their just position. They almost did not encounter any Bastions along the way, only a series of Bastion fighters whizzed past their heads. They discovered it in advance and had to evade it urgently. That was also a Bastion fighter model that Lin Qun had never come into contact with. The fighter was V-shaped, with a total length of 15 meters and a wingspan of nearly 40 meters. It was all black, and 3 of them were in a group. It was extremely fast and passed over their heads like 3 terrifying giant eagles. Along the way, some survivors could be seen hiding in some surrounding buildings. They looked out of the windows in horror, but the mission of Xiao Yi's team was not to rescue. He just recorded and reported the location of these survivors, and the command center would assign other teams. Their team had stronger combat power and should appear in a more important position. Along the way, they only encountered a group of Bastions. That was also a regular Bastion army, more than 30, fully armed, with 2 armored vehicles, and they met Lin Qun and his team head on. The 2 sides exchanged fire fiercely, and this group of Bastions did not have the firepower of the previous batch. The 3 military tanks removed the city camouflage, roared and fired, and the Bastion's armored vehicles were torn apart like paper. On both wings, Liuiui and Xiao Yi each led a group of people to attack. This group of Bastions was also very fierce, fighting and retreating, and fighting to the death. They are waiting for reinforcement, and they must be killed as soon as possible. Xiao Yi's order was conveyed through the communicator. 5 kilometers ahead is the battlefield where 3 Bastion sailing ships besieged the emerging survivor base. The area is full of Bakatan people. The human troops are advancing in secret. If they cannot end the battle quickly, they will face a steady stream of terrifying Bakatan reinforcement. At this time, Xiao Yi took the lead and blocked the commander of the Bakatan team in a building and was about to attack all the way. But suddenly, among this group of Bakatans, a telekinetic master suddenly jumped out. It had been dormant for a long time, and at this moment, it took action, using the narrow terrain to collapse the entire staircase and submerge all these humans under the ruins. Its telekinesis was activated, and the surrounding walls instantly collapsed and shook violently, and the dense cracks spread like a spider web. Liui urgently shot a light arrow, but the ordinary Bakatan's invincible attack was useless. The moment it approached the telekinetic master, it was deflected and hit the wall on one side. The bullets fired by the military also solidified in the air in front of its terrifying invisible power. This Bakatan telekinetic master is at least level 12. Xiao Yi's expression changed drastically. Retreat quickly. But the next second, all the vibrations stopped. The bullets continued to move forward, and the head of the Bakatan telekineticist suddenly disappeared, and the headless body fell to the ground with a bang. Xiao Yi and others all gasped. This time he was sure that the supermaster must be by their side. But at this time, there was no time to find someone. He led his men to attack all the way and ate up this small group of Bakatan people in one breath. Then he immediately came out of a messy building and heard a harsh roar outside. Ni Wensheng outside roared, "Hide! Hide!" A Bakatan light attack ship was flying through the air at a high speed, flying over the battlefield at a very low altitude, dropping multiple missiles, and the two tanks in front were instantly lit up into torches that soared into the sky. The people on the ground panicked and evaded, and were blown up. The street where they exchanged fire instantly turned into a sea of fire, and the counter-attack bullets, chasing behind it, were either deflected or thrown away directly. Retreat. Retreat. Exchange for electromagnetic interference armor-piercing shells from the contribution point mall, which can directly break through its instantaneous activation deflector shield. Xiao Yi led his men to retreat rapidly. When he turned his head, he saw that a person behind him had actually left the team and ran out. Isn't that courting death? He was going to run out to save people. He recognized that the man was Lin Qun, the relative who was stuffed in by squad leader KO. Damn, these relative people. But at this time, Xiao Yi couldn't care less, because the Bakatan light attack ship had turned back at high speed and dropped a missile at the position of Lin Qun. On the street in front, Li Xing didn't follow the rush to the building just now, but was outside with Ni Wensheng and others. Who would have thought that the attack ship was whistling over, and a missile, the shock wave directly blew him away, bruised all over, dizzy, and burning all over. When he looked up, he saw Lin Qun running towards him, and behind Lin Qun, the attack ship was killing him, and directly dropped a missile. At that moment, Li Xing was desperate and moved. He knew that he was doomed. He also knew that, even if the boss was powerful, he could not block a missile. In his muddled mind, there was only one thought: he could not kill the boss. He desperately shouted, "Don't come over! Don't come over!" But he failed to persuade Lin Qun. In the moment before the missile landed, Lin Qun rolled over and suddenly blocked in front of him, raising his hand and holding something. Then, the missile came down with a bang. The heat wave was scorching, and the explosion at close range almost pierced the eardrum. Li Xing instinctively closed his eyes and thought he was dead. But he was moved in his heart. He didn't expect that Lin Qun would come to save him, and in this situation, forget it. There is no chance in this life. If there is a next life, I will definitely. Hey, why am I not dead yet? Li Xing instinctively opened his eyes and saw a scene that shocked him. Not only was he not dead, but Lin Qun in front of him was also not dead. Even Lin Qun was carrying a shield and was almost motionless. In front of him, fire was spreading, and the flames of the explosion were rising, reflecting Lin Qun's body as unshakable as a mountain. In Lin Qun's hand, he was holding a metal round shield with a silver star pattern, red and blue, which was a vibranium shield. Of course, Lin Qun didn't want to take any risks. He originally wanted to blast the missile with one glance, but the missile had already flown out, and its speed reached its limit. Lin Qun's dynamic vision was not that exaggerated. If he couldn't see it clearly, he couldn't blast it.
He still had some regrets about this. After all, the best response plan is naturally not to resist the missile by himself. On the other side, Xiao Yi and others didn't know Lin Qun's idea, and they were already horrified at this time. Xiao Yi blurted out in surprise, "Am I seeing right? He resisted a missile?" Chapter 68. He is Ying. The flames stopped. With his heart pounding like a war drum, Lin Qun slowly raised his head from behind the shield. His wrists were burning with pain and his hands were bleeding. But he succeeded. He resisted the missile. The vibranium shield played a huge role. A shield blocked a missile without any damage on it. At this moment, this iconic shield was held in Lin Qun's hand, becoming the focus of everyone's shock and attention. Lin Qun only felt a little numb in his arm. He understood that, even if hiding behind the shield could resist the flames, impact and scattered fragments, and the vibranium itself could absorb kinetic energy and unload a certain amount of impact, it still required a strong physique and strength. Otherwise, he couldn't even hold the shield. In the whole field, no one could do it, except him with a 27-point physique. Even if the shield was given to Ni Wensheng, and he was asked to do it, he would not be able to resist this missile. The moment it hit, he would be blown away by the terrifying force and his body would be directly swallowed by the flames and explosion. Behind Lin Qun, a loud noise was heard. The bastion attack ship was shot down by special weapons and crashed into a building behind it, with flames shooting up into the sky. The flames rose, and Lin Qun stood in the center of the flames, straightening his back. His eyes moved. Everyone on the battlefield was looking at him. Xiao Yi, Liuiui, Ni Wensheng, seemed to be looking at some monster. They were all of high level and knowledgeable, and knew what that missile meant. Even they would be killed directly, but what happened in front of them was, Lin Qun was not killed, but stood there in good condition. Except for his bleeding hands, he had almost no injuries. His shield can block missiles? Liuiui murmured. No, not only a shield, but he himself is more exaggerated than a shield. That's a missile, and one shot can even knock a person down. That's a fucking missile. Xiao Yi's face was also full of disbelief. There is no Marvel in this Blue Star world, so they don't know about vibranium and shields. They don't know that the shield actually helped Lin Qun absorb most of the kinetic energy. Therefore, in their eyes, Lin Qun is even more terrifying. Especially just now, Xiao Yi had already judged in his heart that Lin Qun and Li Xing were both dead. The contrast at this moment made him feel an indescribable feeling in his heart. Xiao Yi's first reaction was even, this person is the one who killed a bastion attack ship single-handedly. But he was a little bit unbelievable. After all, Lin Qun did not show the ability related to the mysterious strong man that Xiao Yi witnessed that time. What if their team is hiding another one? On the other side, Li Xing had already climbed up. Although he was shocked, he had been with Lin Qun for so long, and he was used to it. The boss is a boss after all. Li Xing stretched out his hand to heal Lin Qun's injured arm and said, "Brother Lin, I owe you a life." He changed his address to Lin Qun. Lin Qun shook his head. "If I can save you, I will. If I can't, I won't do it. And your skills are very useful. I'm still waiting for you to grow up and give me blood like crazy in the future." Li Xing just said, "Thank you." Having said that, Li Xing understood that it was not Lin Qun's obligation to save him. He could choose to stand by and watch if he had the ability. Blocking a missile would be risky anyway. But Li Xing didn't say anything more. He knew that words were meaningless. Action was the way he could repay Lin Qun. Lin Qun retracted his gaze and looked to the side. Xiao Yi also walked over. He saw Li Xing treating Lin Qun's injuries and said in a complicated way, "Your ability should not be used in this kind of battlefield. You should be trained in the best way. Unfortunately, the current situation is like this." Then he looked at Lin Qun. "Is this shield of yours an exchange item in the contribution point mall?" There are countless things in the contribution point mall. There are millions of things worth one contribution point alone. A shield that can withstand missiles is impossible to achieve with the current technology of Blue Star. The only answer Xiao Yi can think of is the contribution point mall. Lin Qun nodded. "How many contribution points does it cost?" "A few hundred." Lin Qun's answer was very calm. Although he took out this thing with 10 contribution points,
Such a powerful thing does require a few hundred contribution points in the contribution point mall. Having demonstrated his strength, Lin Qun did not need to pretend. He answered whatever Xiao Yi asked, but his ears were still buzzing and needed a few minutes to recover. A few hundred. Xiao Yi's breathing slowed down by half a beat. What does that mean? The total contribution points of the 60th place in the DC area were only 100, and Ni Wensheng, who was 20th place, had only more than 200 contribution points. He immediately thought of the few people who were not confirmed in the top few. Could he be that Yiying? Exclamation mark. No, he was definitely Yiying. Xiao Yi was about to speak. But before Xiao Yi could ask, at this time, a little soldier on the other side ran over and indicated that there was a call from above. This brought Xiao Yi's thoughts back to reality, and he reacted. Now is not the time to study this. He must report the situation here immediately. He looked at Lin Qun deeply, turned his head, and ran forward quickly. Lin Qun then exhaled, and at this time, Li Ji and Xiao Wen also gathered around. Xiao Wen looked up and down at Lin Qun. You are more powerful than I thought. Li Ji said, Brother Lin, I was scared to death just now. It was too scary. Lin Qun patted his shoulder and walked forward. On the way, those soldiers and survivors almost all cast their eyes on him and the shield in his hand, and their expressions were like looking at some monster. One person, one shield, resisted a missile and did not move at all. If this is not a monster, what is it? Lin Qun did not feel anything. The disaster was coming, and everyone in the magic city was on the verge of death. Since Lin Qun had to act with the military, he did not hide deliberately, and there was no need to hide anything. He would take action when it was time, and he did so. Naturally, he was very calm at this time. Liui and Ni Wensheng stood together, also staring at Lin Qun's back. Liui whispered, it seems that they are not relatives, but real masters. I said, squad leader Ko is Captain Chu's man. How could he send us a burden? Ni Wensheng's tone changed very quickly. There was no more disdain in his eyes when he looked at Lin Qun, and there was a trace of admiration and respect in his eyes. I said, why did Brother Li Ji disdain me? It turns out that he has such a real strong man by his side. You said, his shield must have been exchanged in the contribution point mall. He resisted a missile and nothing happened. How many contribution points does that cost? He is fine. His physique and strength are probably inhumane. How many points do you think he has? Why are you talking so much today? Liui glanced at Ni Wensheng and did not respond. He was actually planning to go up and talk to Lin Qun. He was also very curious, and he thought, maybe they don't have to guess here, they can just ask directly. Although they are not very familiar with each other, people may not pay attention. Moreover, Liui felt that this Lin Qun should be the martial arts master who shot down the Bastion light attack ship single-handedly. And the fact is that this is really the case. Lin Qun didn't know that he was the person who shot down the attack ship that platoon leader Xiao and Liui cared about, and he didn't know that the military was looking for him, so he couldn't expose himself. Of course, although Lin Qun no longer had his combat power, he was too lazy to explain to others. He sat in the corner and recovered secretly. There is nothing to talk nonsense with others. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69. Give it a try. Lin Qun didn't stay in the spotlight for too long. Because Xiao Yi brought bad news, our position has been exposed. The 3 Bastion sailing ships besieging the emerging survivor base have sent an air force formation, suspected to be commanded by a telekinetic master ranked in the top 100 in the DC area, and are approaching our position at high speed. Liui couldn't help but say, the top 100 in the DC area, that's at least thousands of contribution points. Do they value us so much? The DC area ranking is the common ranking of humans and Bastions. To be ranked in this ranking, at least 1000 contribution points are required. At present, even Qizi-chan, the first in the DC area, has not made it into the top 100. In this overall ranking, the first place is Bakayan. It should be that they have confirmed our identities and are related to the previous batch of Bakatan armored forces carrying telekinetic brain vehicles. Xiao Yi's eyes swept over. At this time, there were not many people left. They had just been attacked by the first batch of Bakatan attack ships that came to reinforce them, and they lost 2 tanks and a large number of people. The superiors have changed the task assigned to us in consideration of our situation. We will retreat immediately and return to the survivor base. They suffered heavy losses and became the target of the Bakatans again. Now they really can't move forward. After the news was released, everyone quickly began to retreat. At this time, no one mentioned Lin Qun's matter. It was important to run away. The Bakatans were obviously going to kill them. Lin Qun also had some feelings. He had been wandering on the edge of the core battlefield before, hunting each other with the armed personnel of Bakatan. Now, even if he acted with the military, he was actually wandering in the center of the most core and dangerous battlefield. Despite this, he was also full of murderous intentions. It can be imagined how terrifying the real core battlefield is. This is a battle of civilizations. Unless the power of an individual is strong enough, he will be cannon fodder if he is involved in the center of the battlefield. However, even if they retreat, they are disciplined and retreat quickly and orderly. Following the military is indeed different. Even in an emergency, they can be relatively calm. In comparison, they can save more time. When they withdrew nearly 1 kilometer and looked back, they saw 3 V-shaped Bakatan fighters whizzing through the air at the position where they were just now, circling in that direction, and then quickly separated in 3 directions, as if they were searching on the spot. At this time, Xiao Yi ordered an emergency concealment. The armored forces, the remaining military vehicles and the survivors all drove into the underground garage of a community on one side. He received military intelligence that there was a group of low-altitude airships under the 3 Bakatan V-shaped fighters, and they were rushing towards them. There was silence in the underground parking lot. At the same time, the military turned on a set of equipment that could block the Bakatan's thermal sense and living biological detection and electronic signal detection. They had been hiding here for less than 3 minutes when a whistling sound was heard. A row of Bakatans flew by at low altitude. There were 7 of them, fully armed, covered with armor, and fully enclosed. They were definitely not comparable to the modified airships that Lin Qun had seen before. The Bakatan telekineticist ranked in the top 1000 was probably among them. Xiao Yi ordered everyone to be silent. Those who have contribution points must not exchange them. The Bakatans have civilization level exchange items, which can be connected to the internet synchronously, to search for alien civilization creatures in a small area, to exchange for contribution points. Everyone was silent, and dared not move. These 7 airships may not be invincible, but the Bakatan telekineticists here, and the fighter planes that may come back at any time, are the biggest threat. Lin Qun listened to Xiao Yi's words, but he thought of the situation when he was discovered by Bakatan armed personnel in Longcheng Daijing before. At that time, he felt it was outrageous. There was such a thing. It turned out that it was a civilization level exchange item. At least 1 million contribution points. But at this moment, the Bakatan airships cruising around suddenly stopped. The 7 airships were motionless. In one of the 7 airships, the Bakatan telekineticist who ranked 93rd in the Bakatan region and was as high as level 18 slowly closed his eyes at this moment. Its telekinesis was gathering into a line, shooting out from its body, scanning the surrounding area. The Bakatans were not stupid. They came from the air, so it should not be impossible to find any traces. Therefore, they naturally speculated that the group of humans just now might have hidden, and they might be hiding nearby. Although it is powerful individually, it has no special amplification device, and cannot move and scan as efficiently as the telekinetic brain car, but its own ability is also terrifying enough, so it can also scan the surrounding area. The people under the garage were confused and didn't know what happened. Only Xiao Yi had fought with the Bakatan regular army many times and was very experienced. He noticed something and said, the top 100 Bakatan telekinetic masters in that area are likely to be inside. Now that they have stopped, it is possible that the telekinetic master is scanning the surroundings. If so, we will definitely be discovered, because our anti-detection device is ineffective against telekinetic masters. But if not, and there are other reasons, we will be fine. He gave two possibilities. One is extremely dangerous, and the other is relatively safe. His eyes swept over the few remaining soldiers and survivors behind him. We have two choices now. One is to hide here all the time. If it is not the telekinetic master scanning, we should be safe. But if it is, we know nothing. After they find us, they may secretly dispatch troops to encircle and suppress us. When we realize that we have been discovered, we will have no chance of escape. The second is, whether it is or not, we will just fight our way out now. The only advantage of this choice is that we will not be passive. He knew that this judgment should actually be made by him as the platoon leader, but now, his heart was in his throat. His decision was related to the names of so many people here. He said it instinctively, wanting to see what everyone thought. At this time, Lin Qun suddenly said, "Maybe I have a way." Everyone looked at him. Lin Qun looked at Xiao Wen. The clothes and dress of the telekineticist are obviously different from those of ordinary Bastion. Xiao Wen can tell at a glance whether the telekineticist is inside. Xiao Wen was stunned for a moment, and then she reacted. Her eyes rolled back, and she looked directly at the interior of the 7 closed airships of Bastion. Xiao Yi looked at Lin Qun again, and at the same time, he quickly told Xiao Wen the posture and approximate movements of the telekineticist when scanning with telekinesis. Although not everyone around Lin Qun has combat power, their abilities are special, and can be of great use at critical moments. Soon, Xiao Wen opened her eyes palely. "It's here. Bastion telekineticist, I saw it. It should be scanning, just as you described." Xiao Yi's eyes fixed. Without hesitation, he immediately said, "It is clear. We have no choice. Just charge out, and fire the first shot. All units, pay attention and prepare for an exchange of fire. Remember, once an exchange of fire occurs, we must first destroy their aircraft propulsion devices. As long as these 7 airships can't fly, and the telekinetic master can't catch up with us, we will use the intricate urban environment and the anti-reconnaissance equipment we carry, and we still have a chance to escape. Otherwise, once we are bitten to death by them, we will all die here." Everyone showed a solemn expression, ready to give it a try. Chapter 70. Mr. Lin has already flown out. Xiao Yi and Xiao Wen confirmed which airship had the Bastion telekineticist, made a simple deployment, and then organized the troops to kill them. The wounded stayed behind, and all the combat personnel were dispatched, with the goal of destroying the propellers of Bastion's 7 airships. Their tanks roared out of the bunkers, and the heavy turrets turned, and spewed out the flames of death. At the same time, Xiao Yi and his men also rushed out of the underground parking lot. There were only more than 33 people with combat capabilities on their side, 5 people in a group, each responsible for an airship. Seeing that there were not enough people to go around, Lin Qun directly said that it would be enough for him to take Li Ji to kill them. Li Xing and Xiao Wen stayed behind. If Lin Qun had said this before, not only would Ni Wensheng and others have laughed to death, but Xiao Yi would not have agreed. This is a Bastion military airship. Although it only carries 2 machine guns and its firepower is not very strong, it has a strong manned function. There are at least 10 Bastion people in one. Lin Qun and his 2 men rushed forward to face an airship and 10 Bastions. Isn't this just a pipe dream? But with what happened just now, no one questioned it at this time. Xiao Yi even agreed directly. When he fired, he turned his head to look in the direction of Lin Qun, but was immediately surprised. Because Lin Qun was gone. They were clearly rushing out together. "Where is he?" A young soldier who followed him pointed to the front with a look of seeing a ghost, and said, "Platoon leader, Mr. Lin, Mr. Lin, he has already flown out." Everyone behind was stunned. Because Lin Qun really flew out. They were still charging here, and Lin Qun stepped on the ground, and went straight out. He stepped in the air again, and the distance of 20 to 30 meters was gone. The whole person was in the air. What else could he be if not flying? Liuiui was dumbfounded on the spot and said, "It's him, it's him, it's him. He is the martial arts master who single-handedly killed a light attack ship of Bastion." In fact, not only they were confused, but even the Bastions were confused. They were looking for humans here. It would be fine if humans suddenly came out. They were not a mob like the Bakatan armed personnel. They could react, even if they were ambushed. But this human, Pete, was too fast, right? The muzzle of the airship had not been raised yet, but it had already killed in front of us. And the next scene was even more shocking. Lin Qun's target was the airship where the Bakatan telekineticist that Zhao Wen confirmed was located. To capture a thief, you must first capture the king. Since they took action first, they must take the most powerful one down by surprise. Therefore, Lin Qun quickly closed the distance and did not do anything. He directly threw out a fire talisman. The terrifying fireball suddenly appeared on the battlefield. This was a real fireball on the face. The moment the fireball appeared, the straight line distance from the Bakatan airship was less than 5 meters. The airship's turret only had time to fire a row of bullets before it was hit by the fireball. With a loud bang, the airship was directly blown up, turning into a larger fireball with debris flying everywhere, and it fell directly to the ground. The Bakatan telekineticist inside was directly dead or alive. That volley of bullets did not do anything to Lin Qun. He directly raised his shield, took advantage of the powerful reaction force of the machine gun bullets to retreat, fell back to the ground, rolled on the ground, and avoided the impact and flames of the explosion. The humans behind, the remaining Bakatans, were all dumbfounded. They never dreamed that there was such a powerful human here. But this created an opportunity for Zhao Yi and others. They quickly attacked from behind and destroyed 5 airships in a few minutes. One by one, they quickly made an emergency landing, and the Bakatans inside roared and fought back. Especially the position where Lin Qun was almost focused by the Bakatans. There was no way. He looked too fierce. Even if those Bakatans were shot down by others, their first reaction was to attack Lin Qun. Lin Qun used his ability and the vibranium shield to move at high speed, and the dense bullets followed him like a shadow, but they failed to hit his body. They were either avoided or shot on the vibranium shield. The defense of this vibranium shield was extremely amazing, allowing Lin Qun to resist and fight. He even took the initiative to rush towards the Bakatans and took a sneak peek at them. He stared at them to death. He directly knocked a concentration pill that only had 2 left, and his energy recovered rapidly, and his fatigue was swept away. Lin Qun seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, suppressing the Bakatans onto airships alone. This was not only because Lin Qun had a great equipment advantage, but also because Lin Qun's various attributes were extremely high, and he also crushed the Bakatans. Otherwise he would not be able to do it so smoothly and crazily. Of course, he was not so rampant before he got Captain America's vibranium shield. After all, flesh and blood can't withstand bullets. But now it's different. The opponent threw a Bakatan special grenade, and Lin Qun dared to push forward. He can resist and fight, and the headshot female skill kills people quickly. Lin Qun opened and closed, and killed madly. Zhao Yi and others were dumbfounded. Even their special forces soldiers are not so fierce. They have been fighting with the Bakatans for many days, and they have never heard of anyone who can fight against the Bakatans like this. It's probably Qizichun, right? Ni Wensheng looked at Lin Qun with a flash of eyes, and his respect was gone. Deep in his eyes, there was a color of admiration that didn't match his huge appearance. But Lin Qun didn't forget himself. He quickly harvested a contribution point. Seeing that Zhao Yi and his team were almost there, he immediately retreated and cooperated with Li Ji, who covered him and made up for the fish that slipped through the net, and quickly retreated, ready to leave the battlefield. The big trouble was the 3 fighters behind. They were real Bakatan fighters. They were attacking from high and low, and they had no ability to fight back. Unless Lin Qun could really fly, he couldn't even touch the opponent. Zhao Wen's ability couldn't catch up with the opponent's speed. Even if he could catch up, the high altitude distance was not enough. It was a pure beating. Once bitten to death, it would be almost impossible to escape. Take advantage of now to leave quickly. They were retreating quickly. The track of the tank broke, and the driver jumped out and prepared to run into the intricate buildings. But at this moment, a suffocating and terrible atmosphere suddenly emerged in the field. From the wreckage and flames of the first Bakatan fighter shot down by Lin Qun, a figure suddenly rose, and the invisible power surged.
The debris of the airship around it, the flames, the scrapped vehicles on the street, and even the street lights on one side, all rose from the ground. All the Bastion people in the field looked at the voice excitedly. That was their 93rd rank telekinetic master, and it was not killed. The human voice it sent out through the synchronous translator resounded throughout the battlefield. Powerful and arrogant. What a powerful human. But unfortunately, none of you can leave. At this time, in the distance, the roar of the Bastion V-shaped fighter planes broke through the air. They received the message and were quickly turning back. Chapter 71. Kill with one glance. In the center of the battlefield, the Bastion telekineticist rose up. It ranked 93rd in the East region and held nearly 2,000 contribution points, all of which were fresh human lives, and its level had already reached 19. It was proud and powerful. But at this moment, it was extremely angry, because it thought that this operation would go smoothly, but it didn't expect that it was directly shot down by a human. This was a great shame for it. In the eyes of the Bastion people, especially these Bastion telekineticists, these humans were similar to pigs and dogs, ugly, stupid and weak. Compared with them, they were just a group of inferior races who had opened the door to technology by chance. Therefore, at this moment, its breath was fully released, ready to lock these humans. It didn't need to kill them all in one breath, because their V-shaped fighters would arrive soon. All it needed to do was to block their progress. Around it, dense debris rose up, all of which were its shells. But at the last moment, before launching the attack, the telekineticist suddenly noticed something, and looked at a corner among the humans. There was a human who also turned back at that moment, staring at him with his eyes. He was the one who knocked me down with a big ball of fire. So you didn't die in the chaos. Very good. I'll kill you first. Dig out your eyes. At this time, Xiaoyi's color also changed. He knew that if they couldn't leave now, they would be even more unable to leave when they were bitten by the Bastion fighter. Therefore, he urgently ordered to open fire, desperate to shoot down the Bastion telekineticist. At that moment, the air almost solidified, and both the Bastion and the human looked ferocious, wanting to keep the other party here completely. But the next second, the telekinesis that enveloped the entire scene suddenly disappeared, and the pile of things that were controlled by the Bastion telekineticist to rise into the air fell to the ground before they were thrown to the humans. The most important thing is that the humans haven't fired a single shot yet. Everyone watched with their own eyes that the Bastion telekineticist, who was still so arrogant a second ago, just rose from the flames and showed his strength. His head exploded with a bang. The 93rd ranked, arrogant Bastion telekineticist was killed instantly. He was only handsome for 2 seconds and turned into a headless corpse. His power collapsed instantly, and the remaining body tilted and fell to the ground. Lin Qun stared at him to death. Even though he was level 19, he did not have a 54th constitution, so he was killed instantly. The surrounding Bastions were dumbfounded. They never expected that their own masters would be killed as soon as they appeared on the scene. The telekineticist himself might not even have reacted. The humans were all shocked. But Xiaoyi reacted quickly and roared, "Go." They took this opportunity to retreat quickly, turned into the alley on one side, and rushed into the intricate urban area. Behind them, the Bastion V-shaped fighters came in a line, hovering in the air, bombing the complex urban area under their feet indiscriminately. It was difficult for them to go deep into the high altitude, so they bombed according to the heat source on the ground, regardless of whether it was a fire point, a living human or something else. The flames flooded half a block. The building collapsed with a wail in the explosion. At the original battlefield, the remaining Bastions surrounded the Bastion telekinetic master, who ranked 93rd in the East District, looking at each other in horror. They had never thought that a human individual could be so terrifying. A level 19 telekinetic master was killed instantly. What kind of monster is this? In another block, Xiaoyi was putting down the telescope in his hand, retracting his gaze from observing the bombed block opposite, taking a deep breath, and turning his head. This time, they were dispatched with Xiaoyi's remaining half platoon of troops and an armored unit, plus 18 survivors, more than half of the number of people, but now, there are only a few more than 30 people left. Under the heavy bombing, their vehicles and heavy equipment were all abandoned, so they could quickly cross the building area and escape here before the entire community in front turned into a sea of fire. They killed a large number of Bacatans, but at the same time, they paid a heavy price. And this is still not the core battlefield, but just the edge of the confrontation between humans and Bacatans. The anti-reconnaissance interference device has been opened. Everyone in the field was still a little shocked, but more eyes were focused on Lin Qun on the side, because what just happened was too shocking. Not only did Lin Qun kill like crazy, but that Bacatan telekineticist. He was a 93rd level strongman, and he might have been close to level 20, and he was killed instantly. What kind of combat power is this? Doesn't this mean that this Lin Qun has the combat power of the top 100 in the East District? You know, the top 100 in the East District are all Bacatans, not a single human. And the various different abilities displayed by Lin Qun are even more incredible. He can throw fireballs, fly into the sky, and silently blow people up in the head. Doesn't everyone have only one talent? How can he have so many abilities? I couldn't help but ask a question that he himself felt was outrageous, but he had always wanted to ask. Mr. Lin, are you that kind of martial arts master? The kind of martial arts family that inherited the ancient times? The others also looked at Lin Qun without blinking. Although this question seems very stupid, being able to fly, resist, fight, throw fireballs, and even kill people with invisible headshots, these methods are too many. How can it be explained by the awakening of talent? This question made Lin Qun confused. In fact, the situation was urgent at the time, and Lin Qun's attack was also an attempt with unknown results. That telekinetic master was the most powerful one he had ever seen except Baccayan, and Lin Qun didn't know whether he would succeed. But now thinking about it, staring at him to death was both unexpected and reasonable. He didn't know about the Bacatans, but he knew the situation of human upgrades. Normal people would only increase 1 to 2 points of panel attributes when they upgraded one level. If this was the case with the Bacatans, even if they started higher, they might have 14, 15 or even 16, but even if it was 20, it would only be around 36 to 56, and it would be normal to kill instantly. It is worth mentioning that, although this Bacatan only provided one contribution point, it gave Lin Qun a full 1200 experience, which is equivalent to killing 24 ordinary Bacatans. Killing an alien civilization creature, no matter how powerful it is, only gives one contribution point, but the experience gained seems to be related to the strength of the target. In addition to the ones he hunted before, Lin Qun's experience has exceeded the 7,000 mark, approaching level 10. He has a total of 103 contribution points left. But at this time, facing Liui's question, Lin Qun was also a little amused and shook his head, saying, "How can it be so exaggerated? I'm not a martial arts family. How is that possible? Moreover, I don't have so many abilities. Many of them are actually exchange items. It's just that these exchange items of mine are hidden, and I'm quick to act, so you can't notice them. If you have so many contribution points, and there are more things you can exchange, it will naturally look like you have various means." Lin Qun also explained his own abilities. He didn't want to expose his Super S level talent, otherwise it would cause a sensation and a lot of trouble. The contribution point mall, which is full of a large number of alien technology products, is the best explanation. Everyone answered this without doubt. After all, this is an explanation that sounds reasonable, and they can understand. This time they finally understood. It turned out that it was all the bonus of the exchange items. However, they all gasped and envied each other when they heard it. With strong strength and many contribution points, you can be rich and inhumane. They dreamed of having so many contribution points like Lin Qun, who hasn't liked the good things in the contribution point mall. Only Liui showed a little disappointment. It seemed that he really hoped that Lin Qun was a martial arts master or a hermit family. However, at this time, Xiaoyi confirmed that it was safe outside, and also walked over and looked at Lin Qun. It was obvious that he had something to say. Today's 4th round of recommendations. I hope all readers will support you. Thank you for your support. Chapter 72 I'm Not Versals.
The situation has been confirmed to be safe, but the Bacatan fighters are still hovering around. They can't leave for the time being. Hiding here is still the best choice. At this time, Xiao Yi stood in front of Lin Qun, stared at him for a few seconds, and then stretched out his hand. Let's get to know each other again, Mr. Lin. Do you remember me? A few days ago, in the suburbs of the East District, you killed a Bacatan light attack ship. I was also at the scene at that time. Lin Qun nodded at him, and shook his hand. It's me. Let me confirm again. Xiao Yi took a deep breath and said, the person who just killed the 93rd Bacatan telekinesis master, is it you? There should be no one else. Lin Qun smiled. Xiao Yi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. From the early landing to now, he has been dealing with the Bacatans, and unlike Jiang Bin's troops who are mainly responsible for rescue, he has been active on the front line of the confrontation with the Bacatans until the survivor base was established. He followed the division headquarters to garrison the survivor base. He had much more information than Liuii and the others. Not only that, he had also seen many powerful survivors and fought with many Bacatans. He knew what ranking 93 in the East District meant. The general commander of the 6th prison survivor base speculated that the Bacatan telekineticist was around level 20. Many people were not at that level and didn't know what it meant, but he knew it very well. A Bacatan telekineticist around level 20 could even withstand the short-term concentrated fire of a platoon of soldiers. Looking at the entire East District, he knew that only Xiaoqing and Qizichuan had the ability to take down a Bacatan telekineticist to this level, and the only one who could take it down easily might be Qizichuan. But now, there was another one standing in front of him, and it was a one-shot kill. He looked at the other person and the 93 was dead. With such ability, whoever he wanted to kill, wouldn't he just look at him? What's more terrifying is that this person's basic attributes seem to be amazing. He can withstand a missile with an exchange shield. After listening to Lin Qun's answer, Xiao Yi was silent for more than 10 seconds before speaking for the second time. Can I ask what level you are now? 9. Lin Qun replied with a smile. I'm ranked 4th in the East District. Ah, now it seems to be 3rd. Yang. He has shown his strength. His talent for drawing cards needs to be hidden, but his level is no longer necessary to hide. Everyone gasped. So he is Yang. The top 3 in the East District. It turns out to be next to us. Xiao Yi was not very surprised, because he had guessed before asking this question. Others were more surprised. Many people had never seen the top 3 alive, and they all looked at him sideways, as if Lin Qun was a big star. On one side, Ni Wensheng had been staring at Lin Qun. His eyes were uncharacteristically hot, just like a pervert looking at a little beauty who had not worn a few pieces of cloth. He had been wanting to speak, and finally couldn't help it at this time. Can I ask, how much experience does it take to upgrade from 9 to 10? 111. 110,000. People instinctively repeated Lin Qun's answer, and their expressions became dull. This amount of experience is an astronomical figure that is almost unimaginable and unattainable for them. In the battle of civilizations, strong individuals stand out and become stronger and stronger, while most people are mediocre, and their limits may just be the starting point of others. Lin Qun looked at the reactions of the crowd and thought to himself, I'm really not versatiles. Who asked you to ask? Xiao Yi said, Mr. Lin, I must report your situation to my superiors. I won't hide it from you. In fact, after the last encounter, I have reported your situation to Captain Chu, and Captain Chu also reported it to Commander Fu. Commander Fu attaches great importance to it. We need a strong survivor like you. Lin Qun knew that Xiao Yi had not finished speaking, so he did not respond, but only stared at the face of the platoon leader Xiao. Xiao Yi continued, I think Commander Fu may invite you. Of course, even if you are completely incorporated into the military will not assign you particularly dangerous tasks. After all, you are just a survivor. On the contrary, the military will protect you and give you more resources. Our experts will also study ways to train and improve your abilities based on your abilities. However, joining the military is not all good. You also need to cooperate with the military in some research and some actions. Xiao Yi's words made Lin Qun frown slightly. Perhaps what he said was a good thing for others, even for Xia King. But for Lin Qun, these benefits Xiao Yi mentioned were not good for him. His ability does not need experts to study and exercise at all. What he needs is to obtain more contribution points. In this respect, he is extremely special. If no dangerous tasks are arranged, will he still have Bakatons to kill? As for the resources that the military is inclined to, Lin Qun really has no shortage of them. He has special abilities and does not need too many firearms and ammunition. In his opinion, the resources of the military are nothing. The conditions set by Xiao Yi made many people envious, especially the help of the expert team, which even Liuiui did not enjoy much. The experts and the survivor base are also treasures. They are few in number, but they are studying the Bakatons, studying the technology exchanged from them all, and studying the talents acquired by humans. It is not easy to be able to separate them to help someone study their abilities. However, Lin Qun's answer after a moment of silence was unexpected. I think it's good now. I don't have to waste the resources of the military. In the past, he was hesitant and vague about joining the military because without any experience, who could clearly judge what would happen after joining? But Xiao Yi's words made Lin Qun think it through thoroughly. His situation was different from others. The resources and benefits he gained from joining the military were far less than the restrictions it imposed on him. What he needed was not something the military gave him. He just needed the military to help him share the pressure on the battlefield so that he could better obtain contribution points. In that case, he would not need to join the military at all. He just cooperated with the military in combat. In other words, what he needed was actually to cooperate with the military, but with his current strength, it was unrealistic to talk about cooperation with the military. At most, he could only cooperate with the military. Therefore, Lin Qun's answer surprised not only the people around him, but also Xiao Yi. But Xiao Yi did not ask much. He just said, if you don't want to join the military, you can refuse, but I must also fulfill my duties and I will still report it. I understand, it's my duty. Lin Qun nodded. Of course he could understand that this kind of thing was not something that Xiao Yi, the platoon leader, could decide. The atmosphere became quiet for a short time. For a moment, no one spoke. The doomsday had been going on for a long time, and people were used to death. At this time, hiding here and waiting for the Bakaton fighter to leave completely, people did not feel much sadness in their hearts, but more of a feeling of surviving a disaster. However, people were quietly looking at Lin Qun, wanting to contact him, but they felt that Lin Qun was a bit unfriendly. After all, Lin Qun had rejected the military, and Commander Fu valued him, which meant absolute preferential treatment, which many people dreamed of getting, but he didn't look down on it at all. If it was someone else, they would definitely think he was pretending, but Lin Qun's strength was obvious to all. They could only understand, this is the world of the strong. Lin Qun was also happy to be quiet and concentrate on checking his gains. Although today's battle was dangerous, and he spent a long time outside, he gained a lot. 103 contribution points. Wouldn't this mean that he could directly have a 10th company? Just thinking about it, Lin Qun's heartbeat quickened. He was not as aloof as others thought. But what he didn't notice was that in the corner, Ni Wensheng's eyes were getting hotter and hotter as he looked at Lin Qun. After sitting for a while, he finally couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and walked in front of Lin Qun step by step. The shadow cast by his 2.6 meter tall body covered Lin Qun. Lin Qun was stunned for a moment. What are you doing? He thought to himself, is this Ni Wensheng blind? Knowing his strength, he still wants to make trouble? Lin Qun frowned and prepared to stand up. But Lin Qun was stunned by the first sentence Ni Wensheng said. Ni Wensheng was a 2.6 meter tall man, but he looked at Lin Qun with hot eyes. It was no longer the disdain in the morning or the respect later. His expression was like that of a fanatical fan. He said, I'm sorry, I apologize for what I said before. Brother, can you let bygones be bygones and let me follow you? Lin Qun, who was about to stand up, lost his balance and almost sat back down again. Chapter 73, 3 consecutive card draws. Ni Wensheng's request surprised Lin Qun. The surroundings were very quiet, and almost everyone looked over with strange expressions. But Lin Qun reacted quickly. He looked at the look in Ni Wensheng's eyes and realized that this guy was serious. And he had seen similar enthusiasm. When Xiao Wen wanted to ride on her and move by herself, there was a similar look in her eyes. Thinking of this, Lin Qun instinctively glanced at Xiao Wen. The hot DJ girl was also staring at him at this time. The black pupils in her beautiful eyes were turning around, and no one knew what she was thinking. This time, I was stared at by a 2.6 meter tall hunk. Lin Qun immediately coughed dryly. I'm not a gangster. Why should I join you? We're all fighting against the Bakatens together. As for what happened before, it's nothing. Ni Wensheng is an interesting person. He disdains the weak, but respects the strong. He used to disdain Lin Qun, but now he nodded repeatedly when Lin Qun spoke. Yes, Mr. Lin, you are right. We are all fighting against the Bakatens together. Then you have a good rest. If you need me for anything, just ask. After saying that, he didn't even bother to argue, as if he was afraid of making Lin Qun bored. He turned around and sat back, as quiet as a kitten. Li Ji whispered on the side, good guy. He wanted me to follow him before, but this time it's completely the other way around. He wants to follow you. Lin Qun also looked strange and said, however, this Ni Wensheng is not as bad as people say outside. At least he is a real person. At this time, everyone also quieted down and waited for the crisis to be completely resolved before setting off. Although Lin Qun was the focus, everyone was busy with their own things at this time, either treating injuries or calculating their contribution points. Lin Qun was the same 103 contribution points. Lin Qun had been itching to spend 30 contribution points to do a shallow 3 draw to satisfy his craving. This was his first time to draw 3 cards in a row. Soon, the first card appeared, and it was actually an attribute bonus card. Name, any attribute card. Type, bonus card. Consumable, bonus card grade, F grade. Description, using this card, you can get 5 points of attribute value that can be allocated at will, which can be used to improve any attribute. This time, Lin Qun did not add points separately, but added all these 5 attribute points to the constitution. His target is Bakayan, so he has to further improve his headshot limit. His panel data changed again. Name, Lin Qun. Level 9, 8250/11,000. Strength 18 agility, 16 constitution, 32 energy, 10/30 talent. Card draw bonus ability. Lin Qun's constitution directly broke through the 30 mark, which is 3 times the human standard value. This means that targets with a constitution below 64 points can be headshot at will, and most of the Bakatens will not be Lin Qun's opponents. Moreover, after this day's bloody battle, Lin Qun's experience points have exceeded 8,000, and upgrade 10 is in sight. However, how resistant is 32 points of constitution? Lin Qun pondered for a moment, and while few people were paying attention to him at this time, he quietly took out a fruit knife from the Kyankan bag and scratched his arm hard. 18 points of strength are not reserved. When the constitution is more than 20, this will definitely cause bleeding. And this time, except for the skin, where the fruit knife fell slightly red, it was unscathed. The constitution is over 30, and it is another round of terrifying improvement. Lin Qun was a little excited. This meant that he was more resistant to beatings. With the shield of Captain America, his survivability was far beyond his peers. Moreover, Lin Qun believed that even Qi Zichuan could not have 30 points of physical fitness. Looking at the entire East District, among humans, the attribute strength on his panel was definitely the first one. Lin Qun exhaled and quietly put away the fruit knife in his hand. No one noticed him. Who would have thought that Lin Qun, a big man, could quietly stab him? At this time, the second card of the 3 consecutive draws also emerged. Lin Qun took a look and suddenly felt dizzy, because on the card, there were actually white little feet and a section of calves with skin as white as cream. Name, Fairy's embroidered shoes. Type, item card grade, E level. Description, use this item card to obtain a pair of simple and elegant embroidered shoes from an unknown fairy. The texture is excellent. Wearing it can activate a transcendent or a blessing. Special note, this card is one of the fairy's new clothes deck. Collect the fairy's concentration, fairy's embroidered shoes, Fairy's Hairpin, and Fairy's Aromatherapy to synthesize the Fairy's Gaze card, and you will get the attention of the fairy. Do you want to materialize? Embroidered Shoes. At this time, the third fairy card. Only one aromatherapy is left to summon the Fairy's Gaze. This embroidered shoe is also a real equipment. Wearing it can get a transcendental aura. But, what does transcendental aura mean? However, without thinking, Lin Qun also knew that he would definitely not be able to wear this embroidered shoe. Judging from the picture in this card, Lin Qun's feet are a whole circle larger than the fairy's feet. If he wears them forcibly, he will definitely break them. Maybe he can find a reason to give it to Kan Yingying and Zhao Wen. I don't know what size their feet are, Lin Qun pondered, but it's obviously not possible now. He has to wait until after synthesizing the Fairy's Gaze card. Therefore, he did not materialize the embroidered shoes that looked very fairy-like and exquisite. He just took the card and temporarily stored it in the storage bag. 4 sets of cards, only one missing. Lin Qun was looking forward to knowing who this fairy was after the card set was synthesized. Lin Qun turned his eyes and looked at the last card. This one was a magic card from the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Gigantic. Name, Gigantic. Type, Effect card. Consumable. Bonus card grade, F level. Description: when the number of enemies exceeds the number of Rs, you can use this card to activate the effect, which can increase the size 5 times and double the strength and physique attributes. Duration: 10 minutes. This gigantic card is a little different from the gigantic card effect in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Lin Qun's memory, but this is obviously a change, based on the perspective of real use. Moreover, this card is more powerful than the one in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not only can it make the body really huge, but it can also double the strength and physique. Lin Qun's physique is now 30 points. Double the physique, that is 64 points, if combined with the headshot female skill. 2 card effects in a row. Then wouldn't he be able to headshot all opponents with a physique below 128 points? Exclamation mark. Thinking of this, Lin Qun's heartbeat accelerated. Bacchaean. Is its physique 128? Exclamation mark. Chapter 74 Captain Chu wants to see you. In the shadow of the dimly lit room, Lin Qun stared at the giant card for a long time. He silently materialized it and held it in his palm. This will be his huge trump card. A giant card alone is actually nothing. What's important is that it works with the headshot girl skill card to increase Lin Qun's physique to 4 times the headshot. This is extremely terrifying. According to the information Lin Qun obtained at the survivor base, in the first 20 levels, it seems that each upgrade level only increases various attributes by a little, but after 20 levels, the upgraded attribute bonus will change. After that, every 10 levels seems to be a gradient. And back at Ndian, it has gained tens of thousands of contribution points in this round of battlefields on Earth alone, plus its previous level. Lin Qun is not absolutely sure. Combined with the news he had heard from the survivor base before, the military had a missile hit it, and it was unscathed. Although it was just a conventional missile. But what is reflected behind this is its super high physique. Moreover, even if Lin Qun wanted to try, he couldn't. Now Bacchaean was in the new survivor base, under the protection of 3 sailing ships and countless Bacchatan warriors. It was impossible for him to rush within 50 meters of it. If he could hit the head 100%, it would be fine. If not, even with the resurrection of the dead, 2 lives would not be enough for him to die. As for seeking cooperation with the military, and asking the military to help him, who is he? Killing Bacchaean alone would not solve the problem. The giant card must be held in hand first, and then look for an opportunity to see if it can be used to the greatest effect. At this time, the soldiers who were observing outside retreated and brought good news. Bacchatan's V-shaped fighter left, the search was over, and they could leave. Their team suffered heavy losses, and the order from above was to return to the 6th prison survivor base as soon as possible to rest. Lin Qun and his team set off quickly, crossed the city, and rushed to the 6th prison survivor base. For the remaining contribution points, Lin Qun was going to go back to the survivor base to draw cards carefully, solemnly draw cards, so that he could be possessed by the Emperor of Europe. Of course, this is also because it is safe now. Lin Qun is not in a hurry to draw cards at this moment. Retreat first. There is plenty of time to draw cards. Lin Qun is somewhat familiar with this road, which is somewhat similar to his previous escape route from Langcheng Daijing to the survivor base, but this time is different from the previous one. They hardly encountered any Bakatans along the way. Almost all the Bakatans in this area have withdrawn and went to besiege the emerging survivor base. Those Bakatan armed personnel have also been recruited. Standing on a high place and looking far away, you can see the flames rising from the direction of the emerging survivor base. The rumbling sound is also clearly audible here. It is said that there has been a full-scale firing over there. Bakatan Zuancheng will take over the emerging survivor base within 3 days. Now is the first 24 hours. Returning to the survivor base, the wounded were rushed to the hospital for treatment, and Zhao Yi needed to report the situation of this operation to his superiors. The survivors were disbanded on the spot. However, they have formed a fixed formation team and will be notified at any time if there is any action. When Lin Qun left, Zhao Yi glanced at Lin Qun. This time, he would also report Lin Qun's situation. Lin Qun was also clear about this. But at this time, Lin Qun's troubles were obviously not on Zhao Yi, but on Ni Wensheng. The 2'6" strong man came up at once. Brother, where are you going? Do you want to have a drink at my place? I have a single cell, and I have 1988 Lafite. As for Liuiui, he also followed Zhao Yi up. He has completely joined the military, unlike Ni Wensheng, Lin Qun and other survivors who were mobilized. This is not necessary for the time being. I have a place to live, and I have food. Lin Qun stepped forward. Back to the survivor base. He was ready to continue drawing cards. There are still 70 contribution points, which can be drawn at least 7 times. He is a little looking forward to what other cards will come out. Ni Wensheng followed behind eagerly. Brother, your food is yours. If you eat your food, won't you have less? Just eat mine. I don't mean anything else. I just admire the strong. Brother, you are the most powerful person I have ever seen. Ni Wensheng also has many younger brothers in the survivor base, so there is no shortage of supplies. It is said that there are people on the government's side. He can really get what he said, such as Lafite. Lin Qun was a little surprised when he heard what Ni Wensheng said, but he still said, no need. It will be 12 o'clock in more than 2 hours, and the bill will be settled soon. I also want to rest for a while. Ni Wensheng is too big, and he is also a celebrity in the survivor base. It would be too conspicuous for him to follow him. They are the troops returning from outside, and there are already many survivors paying attention to them. Lin Qun doesn't want to cause unnecessary trouble for himself. He even saw the figure of Lu Hui, Fan Wenchuan subordinate, in the crowd. The other party looked at Ni Wensheng following him in surprise, turned his head, and squeezed into the crowd and disappeared, obviously reporting to Fan Wenchuan. Hearing what Lin Qun said, Ni Wensheng's face suddenly became stern, and he said, yes, brother, you have worked hard. I won't bother you. If you need anything, feel free to find me anytime. Anytime. You don't have to come to our floor, just shout my name and I will come. After Ni Wensheng left, Lin Qun felt a sense of relief. Li Ji looked amused. Haha, brother Lin, this Ni Wensheng, why didn't I find him so interesting? I think he seems to like you. Don't you think he is Long Yang's he? If I weren't a master, would he care about me? We have been here for so long. Does he know who we are? Lin Qun shook his head, looked at the guy sideways, walked forward, and went straight to his own nest. Zhao Wen behind him frowned. For some reason, she felt a huge competitive pressure from Ni Wensheng. While they were talking, they had passed through the survivors and came to the door of their cell. But just arrived here. Lin Qun was a little surprised. Is this still their cell? Qian Yingying was still in it, but at this time, their small cell was actually full of miscellaneous supplies. When Qian Yingying saw them coming back, she stood up. Noticing their gazes, Qian Yingying also showed a trace of helplessness. Lin Qun was about to ask when he heard a voice from outside. Turning his head, it was an unfamiliar person. It was a fat middle-aged man. It seemed that he had heard that Lin Qun and the others were back, so he rushed over. After talking, Lin Qun learned that this was Huang Dafa, and he was the survive manager of this level of government. Lin Qun was still wondering why this guy came to him. Then he heard Kan Yingying whispered a reminder, all these things here were sent by him. Huang Dafa just smiled and said, these are trivial things, not worth mentioning, and this is my apology. Lin Qun was a little confused. Apology? I don't even know you. What crime have you committed? Huang Dafa's eyes turned and said, of course, you see, you are Captain Chu's friends, and you have been on my level all the time, and I didn't even know it. Do you think I should apologize? Lin Qun finally reacted this time. It turned out that Huang Dafa came for the relationship with Captain Chu. When they participated in the recruitment before, they were on this floor and were taken away by the squad leader of Captain Chu's guard squad. There were many people at that time, and many survivors might not know it, but Huang Dafa, as the manager of this floor, how could he not know? He was smart and came to show his courtesy immediately. In the current survivor base, the relationship with the military is a huge background. Although Huang Dafa is the manager of the survivors on this floor, he is extremely powerful for ordinary survivors, but in front of the military, he is still nothing. Captain Chu is the superior of Huang Dafa, and even the superior of his superior wants to curry favor with him. Now that he knows that Lin Qun has a relationship with Captain Chu, how can he sit still? Lin Qun was a little amused and explained, this, no merit, no reward, I can't take these things, and you think too much. I don't have such a big relationship with Captain Chu. I just know him as a friend, and I'm not familiar with that friend. You think too much. If you don't believe it, you can also go and ask around. Huang Dafa blinked, a little suspicious. But at this moment, there was a commotion among the survivors outside, and the crowd was separated. Kaozin appeared again, just outside, glanced at Lin Qun, and said, Mr. Lin, Captain Chu wants to see you. Please follow me. Hearing these words, Huang Dafa's suspicious look suddenly disappeared, and his gaze suddenly turned back. Chapter 75 The Terrifying Background. As soon as the three words Captain Chu came out, the survivors around started talking about it. This is a huge relationship, an extremely terrifying background. In the crowd, Leo Wu also squeezed out, but he didn't dare to come forward. He had also heard about what happened to Lin Qun and others before, and was very surprised. He knew that Lin Qun and others had some abilities, but he didn't know they were so capable. Not only do they have the ability, but they also have connections that can reach all over the world. The fat Huang Dafa's eyes were rolling around. At this time, he didn't believe what Lin Qun had just said, that he was not familiar with Captain Chu. Captain Chu invited him directly, as soon as he came back. If this is not a huge relationship, what is it? Huang Dafa was not stupid. He thought about what Lin Qun had just said, and immediately understood Lin Qun's meaning. This was clearly a polite refusal. Huang Dafa immediately smiled and said, it's okay, brother Lin, you guys go ahead and do your work. I have these few things, which are not a token of respect, so you can take them. I won't delay your business with Captain Chu. I'll leave first. Anyway, if you have any problems on this floor, just come to me. As he said that, he nodded directly to Kaozin, took his people, and turned around and left. Huang Dafa sent out a bunch of supplies, but he was happier than anyone else, with a bright smile on his face. What a joke. He has established a relationship with Captain Chu, so even his superiors will have to give him some face in the future. These supplies are a great thing for ordinary survivors, but for him, compared with what these supplies can accomplish, what is it? The survivors around him recognized who he was, and they were also surprised and envious. Because you have to know that for ordinary survivors like them who live on this floor, Huang Dafa is a top figure. There are countless people who want to ask him for help and establish relationships, but it is difficult to even see him at ordinary times. Now, Huang Dafa took the initiative to find him. How can people not envy such treatment and contrast? But no one dared to say anything. This relationship alone is enough to discourage people. Who dares to offend? Lin Qun didn't expect it to be like this, and was a little stunned. It seems that he can't push those things out. Huang Dafa comes from the government, and he is very good in this regard. Lin Qun himself knows that Kaozin came this time because of Xiao Yi's report. Lin Qun nodded to Li Ji and others, and followed Kaozin. After Lin Qun left, the people around him started to talk. Lao Wu couldn't sit still, took 2 steps forward, got close to Li Xing, and whispered, "Brother, hide it deep enough." Li Xing and Li Ji looked at each other. Their expressions were a little strange. They knew it too. How could they have any relationship? The previous relationship was based on Wang Han, but now, they all knew the general reason why Captain Chu wanted to see Lin Qun this time. Lin Qun was going to reject Captain Chu. If others knew about this, especially Huang Dafa, the manager had been thinking for a long time, and this was the result. They had nothing to do with Captain Chu. It was a big mistake. Wouldn't Huang Dafa be dumbfounded? It's better for this matter not to be known. Finally, Li Xing coughed dryly and decided to keep his mouth shut. He just said, "Don't ask too much." Behind, Zhao Wen and Kan Yingying looked at each other and shrugged. On the other side, Lin Qun and Kaozin had walked a distance away. On the way, Kaozin said, "Mr. Lin, platoon leader Zhao has reported your matter. I know your concerns, but there are too many people in the survivor base now. I can't hide it anymore. Please don't be offended." This time, Kaozin's attitude towards Lin Qun was obviously more polite than before. Last time, although he believed in Lin Qun's strength, being in the top 30 in the East District was nothing. But this time, Kaozin also learned a lot about Lin Qun's combat power reported by Zhao Yi, and he was shocked. How many people in the entire East District, including survivors and the military, can kill the 93rd ranked Bakaton telekineticist in the East District in seconds? This is a real strong man. Lin Qun nodded and said, "I understand. It's nothing. Besides, it seems that everyone's misunderstanding will not harm me, right? Moreover, this is indeed unavoidable. Now the survivor base is full of people. They have come all the way. There is no place without people. How can they invite secretly?" Kaozin nodded. He is the squad leader of the guard squad beside Captain Chu. He is also a person who knows his limits. He didn't say much, let alone ask Lin Qun anything. He never said anything that shouldn't be said. He led the way silently. The other soldiers he brought, and the survivors on the road, looked at him curiously. The 2 people on the road didn't say anything more. Lin Qun asked Wang Han a question. Kaozin said that Wang Han has now gone to the commander-in-chief to do secretarial work. Lin Qun couldn't help but sigh. Huang Dafa, did you see that? This is a close relative. The office of Captain Chu is located in the deepest part of the prison. What surprised Lin Qun was that it was not on the top, but underground, inside the layers of defense. In the corridor, civilian staff and soldiers hurried back and forth. It seems that the command center of the survivor base of the 6th prison is also underground. However, Lin Qun did not ask much, because he knew that Kaozin would not be able to tell him even if he asked. Captain Chu has an independent office. Kaozin brought Lin Qun over, knocked on the door first, went in to ask for instructions, came out again, and then waited for a while. An officer with a hurried look came out, and let Lin Qun in. It seems that, although Captain Chu did not go directly to the front line, he was quite busy in the survivor base. Lin Qun understood this. Now is a time of trouble. These officers seem to have great connections and power in the survivor base, but that is what they have gained through their abilities. The safety of the entire survivor base rests on their shoulders. Lin Qun has always respected these soldiers, and Lin Qun can afford to wait for this period of time. Kaozin took Lin Qun all the way to Captain Chu's office. After entering, Captain Chu asked Kaozin and others to leave, leaving him alone with Lin Qun. He looked Lin Qun up and down, and spoke first, saying, "So you are Lin Qun. I didn't expect that you are so young, and you don't look like a master." Captain Chu's first sentence surprised Lin Qun. Is this what Captain Chu would say if he wanted to see him? But Lin Qun has experienced too much along the way, and he is not as nervous as a small person meeting a big official. He answered neither humbly nor arrogantly. "I didn't expect that the first sentence Captain Chu said to me when he saw me would be this." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.